Good evening, everyone. I hope we're all doing well. Hope we're all doing fine this evening. It's been a nice, relaxing Friday for me. I'm not sure about everybody else. If not, I hope you're looking forward to the weekend. It promises to hopefully be a good one. Fingers crossed. And I'm streaming for the fucking fourth day in a row because I've got the week off, got nothing better to do. And immediately, as soon as I turn the camera on the stream, my ring light turns off, which is great. It's excellent news. Right, if we can just keep that there. Nope, yeah, it's not working now as well. Good? Apparently not. Right, please bear with us 1 second, folks, while I fiddle around with this piece of shit. Should have just bought a new one, to be honest, but... Oh, well that is right. But only if I hold on to it. Okay, I think we're good. Brilliant, okay. So last night there was the hustings for the Conservative leadership between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. Apparently, it was pretty. There was some pretty juicy clips from it. It's 2.5 hours long. We've got loads of content to get through, so I'm definitely putting this one up to 1.25 times speed. And it promises to be a good reaction. Let's fix my ring light whilst we watch the first bit of this debate.
Finally, we get to the hustings that really matter. After the TV studios, the candidates are here to speak to you, the electorate, the people who matter in this election. This is the first in our hustings tour. For us, the volunteers, to take part in a great exercise of democracy, where we, the members of our party, get to choose our new leader. She or he will be announced on the 5th of September, and as with a party of government, will then become Prime Minister very soon afterwards. As Ian Dale, who moderated many of these hustings in 2019, said, and I quote, "I found chairing the hustings in 2019 a surprisingly positive experience. The members really put the two candidates through their paces and asked some very searching questions. I learned a lot about both candidates, and so did those present. So I ask you tonight to make your questions searching, to make them succinct, and to ask questions and not to make statements, so that more of the audience here have an opportunity to ask those questions. Both of our candidates have a duty and a desire to fulfill our 2019 manifesto. Their differences will be how to go about that in a very different world from 2019.
Hang on a minute. If you've got a manifesto commitments to fill, then you just either fulfill them or you don't. It feels like if they're explicit manifesto commitments, then you just have to fulfill the promises. Like, it doesn't really matter what kind of... I don't think there can really be much differentiation between the two as long as they're fulfilling their promise.
Post-Brexit, post-COVID, in uncertain times internationally, and where our union as a nation is under threat. So I ask you to test our candidates, to seek to establish their strengths, and to see who is best capable of running our great nation. As we're all Conservatives here tonight, I know that you'll all be respectful of our two candidates and keep your questions positive. For them, for me, and for our CCHQ team, who have worked so diligently to set up these hustings at short notice and in midsummer, this is the first of the hustings in a tight schedule which runs until the final rally until the 31st of August. As you know, our ballot opens very soon. You can vote online or by post. We ask that where possible you vote online. Quite simply, it costs us less, and I'm sure that we want all of our hard-earned funds to go to campaigning. I hope that this evening will give you more clarity about how to cast your vote as to who will be our next party leader and our Prime Minister. I hope that you go away enthused and energised in your commitment to helping our great party to win the next election, whether it be by campaigning on doorsteps, making phone calls, stuffing envelopes, or giving us a financial contribution. We need your help and support. Thank you everyone for attending this evening.
You not just ask your mates in the private sector for donations.
Please welcome Andrew Stevenson MP, co-chairman of the Conservative Party.
Good evening, and thank you for coming to our first hustings here in Leeds. I'm delighted to be joined by...
Why have they done it in Leeds, of all places?
by so many members of our party at an event which sold out within hours. During this stage of the Conservative Party leadership election, we have a full programme of hustings across the country. And in every nation of the United Kingdom, we are giving you, our members, the chance to put your questions to the candidates. All these events are available online too, so welcome to those of you joining us virtually. And thank you to LBC for partnering with us today, broadcasting to your loyal listeners. It is right that we start our hustings here in Leeds, and not just because both candidates have deep connections with this part of the country. Leeds is home to our excellent new Northern Conservative campaign headquarters, playing a vital role in getting the Conservative message out across the north of England. And in the last few days, I've been getting out and about across Yorkshire, campaigning with Conservative activists in places like Dewsbury, Morley Outwood and Rother Valley, all seats that will be key to the next general election, and I've seen the strength of our party's grassroots. We've all seen the incredibly strong slate of candidates for this contest. Together, the most diverse range of candidates for any leadership election in British history. And we've shown, once again, that it is the Conservative Party which stands for opportunity and meritocracy.
What? You literally are the party of crony contracts, of gifting money to your mates. You're the party of nepotism, and of the entrenched power of capital. The only thing that's ever led people to be able to succeed is by having a strong level of equality of opportunity, which is provided to you by a social democratic state. If we're just talking about capitalism as an economic system, the countries with the highest levels of social mobility are all the ones where loads of things are provided to you by the state at low or no cost, to make sure that there is a level playing field for everybody who starts. What we have at the moment is an opposite of a meritocracy, where the people who get to succeed are the ones who have parents who send them to private schools, and the people who inherit loads of wealth. We have the literal opposite of a meritocracy right now, so much so that the next Prime Minister of the country might be fucking Liz Truss. Or Rishi Sunak, but obviously Liz Truss is worse. But
No shortlists, no quotas, just hard-working, talented Conservatives delivering for our country. I am staying neutral in this contest, as are all of our hard-working party staff. But I do believe that we have two fantastic candidates, either of whom can take this country forward and tackle the big issues that we face.
and take it forward from the failures of the previous Chancellor and Foreign Secretary.
I would love to have a female leader, but we could be about to have our third female Prime Minister before they've even had one. Or our first Prime Minister of Asian heritage, the second Conservative Prime Minister from an ethnic minority background after Benjamin Disraeli. Having either Liz or Rishi as our leader and our Prime Minister would be something to celebrate in modern Britain. And we should be proud of our long history of this party in leading our great country. We are the world's most successful political party. And that is down to our ideas, down to our members,
And your friends in the media, and the consent that you manufacture.
and down to our record. Our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has shown that a Conservative government can rise to the challenges of today. Getting Brexit done, delivering the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, protecting 14 million jobs during the pandemic, and leading the world in supporting Ukraine and standing up to Putin. That is a truly historic record with which our new leader can build upon with the support of party members. Before we hear from each of the candidates, let us remember why a strong Conservative government is so important. The alternative, of course, is a Labour government, likely in coalition with the Liberal Democrats and the SNP.
I mean, to be fair, looking at the current polling, they might actually have a majority, which is something I would have expected considering Keith's performance so far.
Such a government would risk the integrity of the United Kingdom. Labour would have never got Brexit done. They voted against tax cuts for low-income families. They voted against additional investment for our NHS. And they voted against protecting our borders and tackling vile people smugglers. They campaigned to make
You empower the people smugglers by removing the legal routes for them to be able to get to the country. The only people helping the people smugglers are the Tories and their desire to make sure that they can use them as a cultural bargaining tool. People's lives, right? People die in the Channel, and it's their fault because they want to drive a cultural wedge about it.
Corbyn Prime Minister, who would have taken us out of NATO. And now they want Sir
Based.
Keir Starmer, Captain Hindsight, the Remainer-in-Chief, to run our country. When Labour last left government, they admitted there was no money left. And no Labour government has ever left office with unemployment lower than when they came to power. That is what is at stake. It is our next leader who must relentlessly continue to deliver for the British people.
You say oh well, they've low about all this low unemployment that we get, the Conservative Party. In the 80s, Margaret Thatcher maintained deliberate high unemployment as a means with which to fight inflation. That was a deliberate policy taken by the Thatcher government, was they had managed unemployment to try and drive down inflation because they knew that a tight labour market would drive up wages. That's a deliberate thing they did. So for him to come to us and try and tell us that the Conservatives are the party of low unemployment, that's really fucking rich.
People. Focusing on getting on with the job in hand, leading the way internationally in standing up for our ideas, standing up for our partners on the world stage, uniting this country and uniting the Conservative Party. Now, I know you all want to hear from the two candidates to help you decide who to choose should take our party and our country forward. So with no further ado, let me pass over to your host for this evening for the first leadership contest hustings here in Leeds, LBC's Nick Ferrari. Thank you.
Oh my God, I can't believe it's Nick Ferrari.
Here we go. Okay. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. I'm only going to take about a minute just to tell you exactly what we have planned for you today. First off, obviously, thank you very much. It's an absolute privilege to be here and to bring you this very important husting, the first one. And as you've already heard, this is when the pundits and the pollsters take a backseat, and the people who really matter, those of you in the room, you get to make the decision. And thank you, Peter Booth, for referencing my colleague Ian Dale, who did such a brilliant job last time. I know we all want to send our best wishes to Ian. He sadly fell off a stage at a book festival recently. So, no, it's absolutely true. So we send him his best wishes. When we see what's happened to someone from another broadcast, it seems to be catching. But I tell you, if I go down, I'll take the whole stage with me. Don't worry about that. Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted then. Enough of the earrings. It's time to have a proper hearing from the candidates. Let me tell you how this works. You will hear from both of them in a video in just a moment, and you'll hear from supporters of them as well. I ask a few questions, but you are going to do the heavy lifting. You will do the main questioning, and I will make sure that I'm scanning the room all the time. There are three fantastic people wearing white hoodies, I think, and if you can sort of wave, that's who you need. You need to gain their attention. There's one waving over there. Thank you very much indeed. I don't think you're wearing white, but never mind, you'll do anyway. There's one waving over there. So look for these people who are waving. Yeah, thank you. There's another wave. So when it comes to your turn, wave to them, and that's how we will hear from you. Try and keep your questions as brief as you can, and then we can get through as many. That's it. I'm done. So let's get into the process. Thank you again for the privilege of being here. Ladies and gentlemen, supporters, please welcome the Right Honourable David Davis MP.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening, everybody. It's my great pleasure to introduce Rishi Sunak today, here at the very first hustings, quite properly held in Yorkshire. Today, we face the most important decision the Conservative Party can take, the selection of the next Prime Minister. That Prime Minister will face a number of crises, some known ones on the day he or she takes office, and unforeseen ones in the future. That's why our new Prime Minister will have to have great courage, great intellect, and a strong, consistent set of principles.
Well, looks like you're shit out of luck then, David.
I've known Rishi Sunak for a long time, and I know him to be a man of great honesty and integrity, great intellect and real Conservative principles. But he's also a brave man. Back in 2016, he and others were told by the then Prime Minister, David Cameron, that campaigning for Brexit would seriously damage their career prospects. As a result, of course, a number of ministers either went quiet or campaigned for Remain. Rishi backed Brexit anyway. He put his country and his principles before his career and took that decision. Later on, in 2020, we had to deal with COVID. As Chancellor, he was amongst the first in the world to design and implement a rescue package for the whole British economy. I'll make no bones about it. It rescued our country. We talk about 12 million jobs, but it rescued our country. The IMF described that package as amongst the best in the world, and indeed the fastest into play.
I mean, I will give them one thing. The furlough scheme was good, and we did much better than places like the United States.
He faced a completely unforeseen, once-in-a-century problem and dealt with it with courage, imagination, and effectiveness. He made it happen. And he continued to face tough decisions up until this very day. So our new Prime Minister will face difficult, unpredictable challenges, and for that reason, we should choose them not just on policy, but on character. Rishi understands that we have to take difficult decisions today for the sake of our own futures and for the sake of our children's futures. He stands for true conservative values: patriotism, fairness, hard work. He is the candidate who can restore trust.
How is anything about conservatism fair? Conservatism is the belief in hierarchy, whether just or unjust, and the natural nature of hierarchy. That's the opposite of fairness.
And unite both our party and the country. It's Rishi who can beat Labour and deliver another general election victory. Today, polls regularly show only Rishi beats Keir Starmer. But more
I mean, polls show that neither of them do. As pathetic as Starmer is, they're both so bad that both of them lose in head-to-head contests.
much more than that, polls come and go. Rishi is a man who can outthink all our opponents, Labour, Liberal or SNP. And in the 3 largest polls ever taken, the public clearly think that Rishi would make the best Prime Minister. And I agree with them. That's why I'm backing Rishi Sunak, not just to become our next leader and next Prime Minister, but because I believe he will be a truly great leader and a truly great Prime Minister of our great nation. Thank you.
Well, I wonder what the average age of this audience is. Look at this little snapshot they've got going on here. They're like, we live in a fucking gerontocracy, we really fucking do. We're literally having the Prime Minister chosen by, look how many bald heads there are. Oh, God, fucking hell. I bet if you just kind of sprayed water, half of them would fucking inflate. Just couldn't, or like a shower of moisturizer. Some of them would just have.
My values, traditional conservative values, are clear. Hard work, patriotism,
Hard work unless your parents are really rich.
fairness, a love of family, pragmatism, but also an unshakable belief that we can build a better future.
The best candidate in
We can build a better future for our donors. Oh wait, I said the quiet part loud and the loud part quiet.
terms of grip on our economy and vision for the future.
We work flat out for businesses and families across Yorkshire.
He's very popular in Yorkshire because he tells it how it is.
He'll provide the calm competence we need in number 10 Downing Street.
We're ready for Rishi.
Please welcome Rishi Sunak.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Fantastic to be here in Yorkshire. Now, this campaign has been absolutely brilliant. I've been having the time of my life over the last week, being out and about across the country, talking to all of you, talking to all our members. The weather's been fantastic, so we've been in so many people's gardens. The sun has been shining, so much so that someone even said to me the other day, "Wow, you've got a great tan." Look, I
love how basically nobody laughed at that joke. It was so bad.
Standing here tonight in front of you all for one simple reason, and that's because this country did something absolutely incredible for my family. It welcomed them here as immigrants 60 years ago and allowed them to build a better life. My dad was an NHS GP. My mum ran the local
Let's destroy the NHS.
chemist in Southampton, where I grew up. And they brought me up with a set of values that are absolutely core to who I am today. Now, the first of those values is that family means everything to me. The bonds of love, sacrifice,
You're right, Saravain, how you doing?
commitment that family brings are far greater than anything that any government could ever replicate, and we should never forget that.
Wrong. Lies.
My family also believed
Untrue.
in hard work as the way to get ahead. I worked in my mum's shop. I delivered prescriptions out to elderly patients who couldn't come in and pick them up. I worked as a waiter in the local Indian restaurant, all because that was how we moved forward as a family.
But I fucking despise these people. Go like, oh look at how much more working class than I actually am. That I say that I'm. I worked in McDonald's. I worked for an Indian restaurant. Yeah, mate, you went to fucking Winchester boys' school. Your parents paid 40 grand a fucking year to send you to send you to Winchester boys' school. Jesus fucking Christ! You're not hard up. You're not from a rough time on the never never.
And for my parents, the best way to provide a better future for their children was through
exactly,
education.
Fergus.
And that is why they saved and they sacrificed to provide a brilliant education for their 3 children. And it's why today I believe that the most powerful way we as Conservatives can transform people's lives is through education. So those patriotism, service, family, hard work, aspiration. I think they're probably all of your values too. And that's because they're Conservative values. My story is a Conservative story. And that's why I want to be Prime Minister. I want to
Yeah, literally, just work hard and you'll be rich. That's just all it takes. It doesn't take any amount of nepotism. It doesn't take any amount of resource extraction. It doesn't take any amount of exploitation. Just do the work hard and then just simple. That's all it takes.
Put those Conservative values into action for our country. This country allowed my family to provide me with a better future and fantastic opportunities. And that's what I want to do for everyone, your children and grandchildren. Give them the same opportunities and better future.
No, you've taken away all of our grandchildren's opportunities. I mean, my opportunities as well, obviously, as far as I'm a millennial, but all of the future generations have all had all of their opportunities taken away. Or the opportunity to own a house, the opportunity to be able to, get on in life, to the opportunity to have pensions, to be able to be part of a building society, all these kind of things. These have all been stripped away by the Tories, and the continuing drive towards neoliberal policy has only made things worse for the future generations. But the fucking planet's going to get destroyed because people like him shill for the fossil fuel industry. The only people who are opposing any amount of building a future for the children of this country are the fucking Conservative Party. Jesus fucking Christ.
I enjoyed. And if you support me, I know that we can build a better Britain. A Britain where the birthright of every child is a world-class
Why didn't you build this better Britain in the 3 years you were fucking Chancellor?
Education. A Britain which is built on hard work, aspiration and hope. A Britain where we lead the world in setting the standards for integrity, decency and leadership.
You literally supported Boris Johnson as his Chancellor for 3 fucking years. You are literally the opposite of someone who can claim about integrity. And you're also one of the people who got fined for Partygate.
And a Britain where we have enormous pride in our history and enormous confidence in our future. Now, before we get to building that, we have to deal with some immediate challenges facing us today. 3 in particular. We have to restore trust. We have to rebuild the economy. And we have to reunite our country.
It's really strange how he can claim all of this stuff whilst being the outgoing Chancellor.
In order to restore trust, the first thing we have to do is to be honest, because that's how you do it. Now, in this leadership election, you've seen from me, I haven't taken the easy road. There are plenty of things I could have said that would make my life easy, but I wanted to be honest about the challenges that our country faces and what is going to be required to fix them. Even though it hasn't made my life easy, it is the honest thing to do, and that's what leadership is about.
Now, we have the same amount of kind of educational indoctrination in the UK as people have in the US, right? And we get taught that the British Empire was just this great thing that brought democracy to India and colonised Australia, and when actually, we're fucking absolute global terrorists for centuries.
The other way to restore trust is to deliver on the things that we say we do that are important to people. And that's why I set out a plan to tackle the NHS backlogs, because we're reaching the point where millions of people are anxiously waiting for the treatment that they desperately need and deserve. We can't let that happen, and I will grip it and fix it. That's why I set out a plan to tackle illegal migration, because far too long we have watched on our TV screens people coming here illegally. And yes, this is a compassionate and welcoming country that welcomed my family.
Yeah, because you made them illegal. You could just make them legal. But defining it by legality or illegality can be changed overnight once the law changes. You need to make an actual utilitarian prescription as to why migrants coming over in this particular manner is bad or not. Yeah, exactly. Where are the fucking 40 hospitals we were promised, Rishi?
Family, but we must also have control of our borders, and as Prime Minister, I will finally grip that problem and solve it and restore trust back in the system. Now, you all know we have to rebuild our economy, and you all know that the #1 challenge we face right now is inflation. People's bills rising. We need to grip inflation because it is the enemy that makes everyone poorer. It reduces their living standards. It erodes their hard-earned savings. It pushes up mortgage rates. And
but it puts plenty of pounds into the pockets of the profiteers.
I will grip inflation and get it back down. We'll also help people with the cost of living, energy bills this autumn, which is why we will cut VAT on fuel. But what I won't do is embark on a spree borrowing tens and tens of billions of pounds of unfunded promises and put them on the country's credit card and pass them on to our children and our grandchildren to pick up the tab. That's not right. That's not responsible. And it's certainly not conservative. But of course, once we grip inflation and ensure that mortgage rates don't rise and cripple people, I'm going to cut taxes. Because I'm a conservative. Of course I'm going to deliver tax cuts. I want people to keep more of what they earn, because hard work is something that I value above everything else. I want to make sure that we cut taxes for business so that they can invest and innovate and grow. And we also
so they can keep more of what their workers have earned.
grow the economy by taking advantages of Brexit, which I was proud to support. And as Chancellor, I started to deliver on some of the radical things that we can do differently. New free ports across the country, reforming all our regulations in data, in life sciences, in financial services, to ensure that the United Kingdom is the best place in the world to start a business, to grow a business, to innovate. Because in the 21st century economy, that's how you drive growth and create better jobs. And my experience means that I'm the best person to lead our economy into that future. But lastly, we have to reunite our country. Now, in just a couple of years' time, we have to do something, all of us in this room, that have never been done before in British political history. And that is to win a historic 5th election term. That is going to be a challenge. But I know we can do it together. But in order to do it, we're going to have to appeal to swing voters in every part of our country, north and south, remain and leave, urban and rural, Scotland and Wales. And I believe with all my heart that I am the person, I am the candidate that gives our party the best opportunity to secure that victory and ensure that the Labour Party and Keir Starmer never walk through the doors of number 10 Downing Street. So those are what we're going to do.
You and Keir agree on everything.
Restore trust, rebuild the economy, reunite our country. And in conclusion, let me say this. Now, I know the polls say that I'm behind in this race. I know that there are people who say there should be a coronation, not a contest. But you know what? I heard that once before, 7 years ago, when I arrived in Richmond, North Yorkshire. And ultimately, the members there gave me the greatest honour of my life when they selected me to be their candidate, to be their member of Parliament.
I mean, when you got parachuted into a safe seat?
Many of them are here tonight, and I owe them an enormous debt of gratitude for placing their faith in me. And they have supported me unfailingly every day since. And today, I'm asking for all of your support. And I promise you, I am going to fight for every single vote. I am going to fight for the conservative values that are core to who I am and what I stand for. And I am going to fight hard for the argument that we should not mortgage our children and our grandchildren's future to make our lives easier today.
That's literally been Conservative policy for the past 50 fucking years. That's literally the Conservative policy the entirety of the time has been dismantle every single public service that we have in place to make sure that our society is meritocratic, at least in some respects, and then sell it off specifically to benefit the here and now at the expense of the future. What the fuck, Rishi? What are you talking about? Someone clip that.
And if you select me as your leader, as your next Prime Minister, I know we can build that better Britain that I talked about. But I also know that just like I did in Richmond, I will work my utmost to make each and every one of you enormously proud. So thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
Mind you, of course, you have your opportunity to put questions to both the candidates in just a few minutes' time. Now, could I ask you all again, please, put your hands together. Please welcome the Right Honourable James Cleverly, MP.
Oh, God. Oh, I hate him so much. The least aptly named politician in Parliament.
Thank you, thank you.
You are Reece doing?
Nick, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. You are all here to make a decision. You are all here to decide. And you're here to decide who is going to be the next leader of our party and who is going to be the next Prime Minister of our country. I'm going to let you in on a secret. I have already decided. I have already decided. And that decision was easy for me. And I'm going to explain why I came to the decision that I came to and why I hope you will come to the same decision. I'm supporting Liz to be the leader of our party and our Prime Minister. And I've known Liz for years. And I've known her as an activist. I have known her as an association chair. And I have known her as a local councillor. And I know that she knows what it takes to fight for every vote and to serve a local community. And I know that she knows that you don't get anything for free and that you have to work hard for everything. That's why I trust her to be the next leader and the next Prime Minister. And I also know that she has championed the views that she...
Yeah, we are, like, absolutely right, sensibly, and we are totally, absolutely fucked. Because Liz is going to win, and she is going to be absolutely fucking terrifying. Like an absolute fucking death hawk.
...believes in for decades. Keeping taxes low. Not just saying it, doing it. Promoting freedom, not just here in the UK, but also around...
The freedom to work until you die, but choose who you work until you die for.
...the world. And I know that she is passionate about bearing down on big and wasteful government. That's why I trust her to be the next leader of our party and the next Prime Minister. And I have seen her in action around the cabinet table. I have seen her make the most of the opportunities that Brexit has delivered, getting those trade deals done when she was Trade Secretary. Remember those trade deals that all the smart, clever people...
Yeah, the trade deals that you gave arms to the Saudi Arabian government to murder people in Yemen with, like literally to kill Yemeni children. I'm not sure that's a really fucking... I thought that's a good look for Liz Truss, really.
Told us would never happen. She got them done. I've seen her pushing for less red tape, lower taxes in government. I have seen her do it. And perhaps most importantly, I have seen her stand up to Iran and stand up...
Yeah, didn't Paul Keating describe her as like someone who was trying to cling on to long-lost cultural irrelevance or something?
...to China and to stand up to Russia. I have seen her over and over again...
Yeah, standing up to Russia by forgetting which oblasts are in Ukraine and which are in Russia.
...delivering for...
What Sergei Lavrov described as like a mute talking to a deaf person.
...this country. I trust her to deliver. That's why I'm supporting her. That's why you should support her. And what I'm now going to do is give you the opportunity to watch a short video explaining it in a bit more detail. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The United Kingdom is a great country, and I know that a united Conservative Party can unleash the potential of all the people who make our country so great. To win the next election, we need to deliver, deliver, and deliver for the British people. I know that our country's best days lie ahead. I'm the candidate with a clear vision for the future, who can drive change and get things done. As Trade Secretary, I negotiated deals with allies like Australia and Japan, creating opportunities around the world for British business. And as Prime Minister, I will continue to deliver on the opportunities of Brexit. I will lead a government committed to core Conservative principles: low taxes, a firm grip on spending, driving growth in the economy, and giving people the opportunity to achieve anything they want to achieve.
What's interesting is I was literally reading a paper last night that was showing that when the incomes in the society are more equal and you have more redistributive policies, economic growth is actually higher.
Regardless of their background. I will work day and night.
There's an Australian news broadcast about the trade deal. Oh, please, that sounds fucking hilarious.
To lead a party and a government that puts more money in your pocket and secures a better life for you and your family. I've consistently delivered when I have said I would. And I love our country. I want the best for us all. and I'm the person to deliver.
Oh yeah, there's almost, yeah, absolutely right, Sensibelium. Civil unrest is definitely what's going to happen. If the don't pay your energy bills thing starts getting some traction, that could springboard into further, actual unrest.
Please welcome Liz Truss.
Quite right, Sensibelium.
Friends and colleagues, it's fantastic to be here in Leeds, my old stomping ground. I grew up in this great city. I went to school at Allerton Grange and Roundhay. I hope there are no teachers of mine in the audience, and if there are, I'm really, really sorry.
She's such a charisma vacuum. Like, I just can't. You know how I get mad at Keir about his desire to look prime ministerial, but can you really imagine someone like Liz Truss ever actually becoming prime minister, yet alone like winning a general election, considering just how pathetic she is as like any amount of public speaking? Like, believe me, I had my doubts about Corbyn's ability of public speaking, but he still managed to rally people around him. Whereas I can't think of anybody who would get excited about Liz Truss, especially not floating voters, right? Because she's not inspiring. She's not a good orator, and she doesn't have any like vision or anything like that, other than just making the UK into a sweatshop.
I bought my first Whitney Houston album at HMV in Briggate, and my mum and dad still live in this fine city. And what I think I got from Yorkshire is grit, determination, and straight talking. And that, my friends, is what I think we need now in Downing Street. Because the fact is that we face a huge global economic crisis. We have the worst war that's taken place on European shores happening in Ukraine. Now is not the time.
No, I definitely don't want to ask what your role in it was.
For business
We don't want to do that.
Now is not the time for the status quo. We need to be bold, and we need to do things differently. And what I would do as your Prime Minister is I would launch a plan for economic growth. First of all, reversing the increases in national insurance that we promised not to do in our manifesto. I'd have a moratorium on the green levy to save people money on their fuel bills. And I'd also keep corporation tax low so we can attract investment into our towns and cities across Yorkshire and across the whole of our great country. Because I believe that we need...
Yeah, literally. Bold as in literally ideological objectivism. Just, I am become Murray Rothbard.
...to be on the side of people who work hard and do the right thing. People who save their money. People who start their own businesses. The self-employed. People who go into work every day. That's whose side I'm on.
No, you're not, because you're not giving them, the levelization tools available to be able to be socially mobile. Social mobility has absolutely dropped off a cliff in the last 12 years.
I'd set up new low-tax investment zones that enable those businesses to start up in areas that have been left behind.
Well, this is why you see so much of the hard work rhetoric from the Conservatives, right? They can only appeal to the value of hard work because by treating it as some kind of overall social good in its essence, rather than the actual utility that you gain from the work that you do, they're able to frame it as edifying if you're spending 50 hours a week slaving away as a cleaner or as somebody who earns an incredibly low wage. Because they are making it as a kind of Protestant work ethic, Max Weber style stuff, where it's somehow personal, like a personal, it gives you great personal growth to slave away at something that's miserable with no societal value. And I guess cleaners have plenty of societal value, but they just don't get paid enough.
I'd abolish the top-down Soviet housing targets that we have across our country. Now, before I became an MP, I was a councillor. I sat on a planning committee. And those are hours of my life that I will never get back. Because we all know how appalling the planning system is. And why should it be the same in London, as Cornwall, as Yorkshire? I want to give power back to local people. And why should the transport here be so bad? Now,
because you privatised it, you stupid cunts.
I remember as a teenager getting the bus into Leeds city centre because there was no other alternative. I'm afraid, my friends, it's not much better now. Leeds is still the largest city in Europe without its own metro network, and I would work to fix that. And I will get Northern Powerhouse Rail built. And I don't know if we've got any farmers in the audience today, but I will also help the brilliant farmers here in Yorkshire who produce great beef and lamb, fantastic Yorkshire rhubarb. I would help them by removing red tape and help them sell their fantastic food across the world. We need to unleash...
Just not to Europe, okay? Let's just be clear about where they're going to have to sell it, not to a huge global trading bloc that's right next door.
We need to unleash the potential of our great country, and we need to be bold to do that.
You've had 12 years to unleash the potential, Liz. What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm the person that can take those.
I'm going to say that a lot. I'm going to say there's going to be plenty of why did you not do any of this in the last 12 years?
Steps. But we also need to continue to stand up to Vladimir Putin and the appalling war that he has waged in Ukraine. We were the first European country to send weapons to Ukraine. We put on the toughest sanctions of any country in the world on Russia. And I would not let up until Ukraine...
You guys literally gave the... you guys literally gave all of the oligarchs enough time to remove all of their money before... oh, I'm going to change my stream to just chatting. That's not the correct... There we go. Yeah, you literally gave your like all of the Russian oligarchs enough time to move their money out of London before you implemented any of the actual sanctions. Like all you've done is impoverish like random members of the Russian working class, members of like the Russian population, and have done nothing to any of the rich fuckers who actually control any of the purse strings within Russia. You did nothing.
Prevails and Putin fails, but we have to recognise that we need to spend more on defence. Because after the Cold War, we let our guard slip. We allowed the aggressors to expand. And that is why I would put defence spending up to 3% of GDP by the end of the decade. Because there is nothing more important.
See, that's fine. Big government is fine as long as it's in service of killing people. In service of helping people, funding the NHS, Sure Start centres, taking control of certain industries that have inelastic demand curves to make it more available and cheaper for all of the people on the bottom rung of the ladder. That's big government. That's too much spending. As long as we're blowing people up in different countries, that's absolutely fine. There's plenty of magic money tree available, quote unquote, to be able to bomb people.
Than freedom and democracy. And we simply can't allow this situation to continue. But as well as freedom and democracy abroad, we also need it at home. And I know we've got an audience full of straight-talking Yorkshire people who know that a woman is a woman.
I mean that's already implied. That's like saying I think that a chair is a chair. Well done. A chair is a chair. Brexit does indeed mean Brexit.
And people who believe in free speech. I love
how would you like my free speech calling you a piece of shit?
Our country, warts and all. And I'm proud to represent us around the world. And I want to do all we can to encourage our fellow citizens to love their country too and unleash its full potential.
Yeah, I want to love it for good reasons, not because of how bad, not in spite of it, right? Like, give me good reasons to love it, and I'll love it. But unfortunately, it's a miserable country full of racists and crab bucketers and poor, and huge amounts of incredibly emaciated poor people who you're wondering whether we might actually have to have people wandering into libraries because they can't afford to heat their homes, right? This country is not a good country. It's not have a good history, but it could theoretically have a good future. And what you're doing is creating division, not fixing anything, and plundering more wealth from the working classes. And that is not a country to be proud of, Liz.
And finally, my friends, we need to be proud of who we are. We need to be proud to be Conservatives. I'm going to campaign as a Conservative, and I will govern as a Conservative. The people who voted for us in 2019, in seats like Keighley, in seats like Dewsbury, they didn't vote for us because they wanted Labour policies. They were fed up of the Labour Party. They were fed up of the failing...
Well, they wanted to get Brexit done.
...Labour councils. They voted for us because they wanted opportunity, because they aspired to better things, because they wanted enterprise in their area. And that is what I, as your Prime Minister, am determined to deliver.
I cannot stress enough just how much bullshit this idea of kind of Tory aspirational kind of garbage that they try and peddle is. When, as I've said previously on stream in this segment, right, the way you actually have an aspirational society under capitalism is by having everybody an equally opportunity to be able to succeed. And when you have so many of the things that are necessary for survival paywalled behind private companies who can charge what they want because the demand is inelastic, and they spend so much of their income having to eat on the base subsistence of life, they cannot then use that money to reinvest and make something of themselves. That is not social mobility. All of the social democracies in Europe have far more social mobility than we do in fucking neoliberal hell.
Now, since I lived in Yorkshire, I have...
the New Zealand television Brexit trade deal. Let's watch this.
British farmers have reacted with shock to the terms of a new free trade deal with New Zealand.
The deal will see Kiwi meat imported without tariffs, and farmers in the UK say they get nothing in return. As Europe correspondent Lisette Raymer reports, they fear it will change their businesses dramatically.
A world away from rejoicing Kiwi farmers, their welly-wearing counterparts feel as though
I love how it's essentially Kiwi farms what we're talking about here.
they are the sacrificial lambs of the free trade deal.
We're not competing on a level playing field.
The UK's less intensive approach to farming means their offerings could quickly be outpriced and outstocked by New Zealand's once tariffs are removed.
For a lot of people, it is all about price. So when you are at the shelf and you've got one leg at this price, one leg at another price, people have got to make those decisions.
The freshly inked FTA will see the quota of tariff-free lamb exported to the UK increase sharply over the next 15 years. And after that, it's a complete free-for-all.
I think the main message is the fear of unknown.
The brave new free trade world will come around even faster for dairy and beef.
Oh, George, I haven't got any apples for you, sorry.
Liz Webster knows the feeling. The deal has left her wanting too.
It's us surrendering.
It's New Zealand telling us that the deal that we got was bad. What the fuck?
Relocated to Norfolk. And I'm afraid to say, and I'm afraid to say this at Elland Road, I've become a supporter of Norwich City FC.
100% sensibility, you're absolutely right.
They're a fine family club. You know, what can I say? Delia's a great woman, great cookbooks, I think you can all agree. But I do want us to channel the spirit of Don Revie. Because we need to win. We need to win. And my friends, we can win against Keir Starmer, who is a patronising plastic patriot. He is beatable, but he is only beatable if we deliver.
Oh no,
and
the worst person you know just made a great point. In that Keir Starmer was literally just performatively standing in front of flags, which we absolutely know to be true.
If you elect me, I will work my socks off in number 10 to deliver all of the promises we made in 2019 and to deliver a victory for the Conservatives in 2024. Thank you. Thank you.
I just think that she doesn't know how to do public speaking properly. I just think that she's never probably been trained in how to publicly speak. And so she doesn't know how to breathe through it properly. That, and also in general, she has no charisma at all. Yeah, that's the big issue. That's the issue that we have with our economy, sensibility. Is so much of our money gets spent on essentials that are being hoovered up by private equity firms who then send it off to the Cayman Islands. That we have no ability to actually consume for things we want to spend our money on. It all just gets spent on necessities, and every other industry is going to really suffer.
Thank you.
She does look and sound like she's still opening the new pork markets.
OK, Liz Truss, thank you very much for that. Just to explain, there is a brief break now, around 10 minutes. And then, of course, I have a few questions, but you do the majority of the questions. I remind you, look for the people in the white hoodies to make yourself known. Around 10 minutes now, then, ladies and gentlemen, when you... So, ladies and gentlemen, hands together if you would. Rishi Sunak.
Oh, I got to the right point of the video like an absolute boss. You know what I'm doing?
Hello, sir. Good to see you. Thanks.
My room looks extremely purple in this light.
Come in. Yes, indeed. OK, thank you. Mr Sunak, do I detect the smell of burning rubber? Have you performed an extraordinary U-turn over your decision with VAT on energy bills? Last week it was unconservative. Now it's a policy. Are you flipping and flopping?
Oh, gosh, no, definitely not. There's two very different things here. Now, we've got a short-term problem with energy bills, which I always said as Chancellor, we would need to continually make sure that the support...
Short term? We're expected to be paying £3,500 by next January.
...we had in place was appropriate for the scale of the challenge that millions of households are facing. Now, we announced quite a lot of support earlier this year on the basis that energy bills would rise to about £2,800. And for the most vulnerable families, that gets to about £1,200 of help. But now, as you can see in the news, people's expectations of what will happen to energy bills in the autumn has gone up. And so it's reasonable that there's more that we can do, and that is the policy that I would put in place if I was elected PM. No, but that is a temporary and...
I mean, I only like Rishi in this contest because he's the only two of them who is actually sane. Like, he may be evil, but at least he's sane, whereas Liz Truss is legitimately fucking insane.
Time-limited support to help people over the winter
But it
through
was
to next year.
unconservative last week, Mr.
No,
Sunak.
what's unconservative is permanent unfunded tax cuts. There's a big difference between things that are temporary to help a short-term problem and permanently borrowing 40-50 billion pounds every year and not paying for that. That I think is a big difference.
Without wishing to be too confrontational, you were Chancellor until a few weeks ago. UK growth is set to be the worst in the G20 besides Russia. Another study says we will go from 18th to 31st out of 38 OECD countries. Members here see their pound shrinking, probably as fast as they see their high streets closing. Why should we take financial lessons from you?
Well, if you're picking the 1 year, if you look at actually the period in both of those forecasts, you'll see that we're either the second fastest in the G7 or indeed and much higher.
No, that's just not true. We are, like, our growth is not 0.5% or something like crap like that.
Higher in the OECD. So we had a faster recovery than other countries out of COVID, and we were growing faster than last year and this year, and unsurprisingly, they're catching up. So if you look at it over the period,
You're happy where the economy is.
We're actually, no, if you're saying that we're bottom of the pack is what you're trying to allege, right? So if you look at it over the period, we're actually very much in line or to the top end on the G7. But of course I want to see growth growing, Nick, right? Of course. Now, we have to think about how to do that, because we've had a very narrow conversation so far about tax. And actually, in a 21st century economy, there's many other things that we've got to get right. If you want to grow the economy today, you need to make sure that our financial markets are reformed so we can get businesses the money they need to grow. We need to have a visa regime that attracts the best and brightest from around the world. We need to do regulation differently to make sure that we support people who are trying to create...
Do we actually want a high-skill economy for British workers, or do you want to import all of the high-skilled people from elsewhere? You know, the good thing about previous immigration policies that allowed our economy to grow by increasing the population, whilst also meaning that we had plenty of high numbers of people in the workforce who are happy to do new jobs on the bottom end so that native workers could be able to be promoted to levels of management. I thought that was the whole point of having the immigration scheme we had before. But then again, the new immigration scheme is supposed to make sure that we just have generally a high-skill economy, but if you say that we want to import people with all the high skills elsewhere, surely that means the people that you're trying to entice to vote for, you get stuck doing all the jobs they don't want to do. That doesn't make any fucking sense, Rishi.
New things. Now, those are some of the ingredients about growth in the 21st century. That's what I think we need to do. That's what I will deliver as Prime Minister. And that starts with getting businesses to invest more in the economy, right? And actually, this autumn, what we need to do is reform our business taxes to get business to investing more, to creating better jobs and higher wages. That's the kind of thing that we need to do to drive up those growth rates.
That's why actually Rishi Sunak is not wrong in this point particularly, because his plan of increasing corporation tax would get businesses to invest more. If they're going to get taxed on any additional profits that they do make, they might as well reinvest more of it because they're going to be making less of it than they otherwise would because of the increased corporation tax. That's the whole point of higher corporation tax.
To ask you, who's been the best ever leader of the Conservative Party and why? Who would you pick?
Probably Margaret Thatcher.
Why?
Why? They've delivered multiple election victories and changed this country for the better.
You were in Grantham.
The better? Explain how. Everything's just markedly worse since she was in power. You couldn't even say fucking Churchill. Come on.
I think on the weekend, the home of Margaret Thatcher. How would she have responded to the fact that you're the first Chancellor since Labour's Dennis Healey in 1974 to raise corporation tax?
I think she would have responded, as I have done, in gripping inflation first. And if you remember her early budgets and actually what we had to do...
Yeah, literally, Thatcher caused basically all the problems that we have right now.
Country at that phase, it was, even though it was difficult, she understood that you have to get a grip of inflation first and get a grip of public spending and borrowing. That was very much her mantra, was do that first, because if inflation had run out of control and made everything worse for families, it would have been far more damaging for the economy. And it was only once she had fixed that, once she had got borrowing under control, that she embarked on a programme of supply-side reform, and that is exactly the same path I want to follow.
She would have supported the high level of corporation tax, you're saying?
You say high level.
It's still 1974.
Right,
we go back.
It's the lowest rate of corporation tax in the G7 group of economies that you just talked about. It's actually the fourth.
Yes, which is why it needs to be raised.
Lowest in the G20 group of economies.
Yeah, there were 2 recessions when Thatcher was in power as well.
Also talked about. I don't think anyone can say it's a high level by international standards.
But
actually, this is the thing. If you want to drive growth in an economy today, you need businesses to invest. And we tried having a very low corporation tax rate as a means to get businesses to invest. And you know what? We didn't just try it for 1 year or 2 years. We've tried it for a decade, and it hasn't worked. So the question is, for people who think that we should have an even lower corporation tax rate, but not have what I'm proposing, which is actual tax cuts on business investment, the question for them is, well, why is that going to drive growth? Because we've tried it for a decade, and it hasn't worked. Because businesses haven't invested that money back in the economy. So if you want growth...
no word of a lie here from Rishi. Like, he's telling it like it is. He's absolutely correct in saying that when you have the low corporation tax, it does not get people to invest. It just encourages them to take the money and run.
If you want productivity, if you want better jobs and skills, we need businesses to invest more. So I would cut the taxes on business investment.
And a lot of support in the room. 3 yes or no questions, which I'd ask you to answer with a yes or no and a brief explanation, if you would, just so we get a sense, a little bit more of you. Mr. Sunak, would you support the return of grammar schools?
Yes.
Why?
Well, but as you heard from me earlier, I believe in educational excellence. I believe education is the most powerful way that we can transform people's lives. But I also think there's lots we can do with the school system as we have it. Now, what Michael Gove did several years ago was transformative.
Yeah, transformative in like the worst way possible. Literally everyone agrees that Michael Gove's education reforms were terrible. No, everyone agrees that they're bad.
And Michael took on some vested interests, challenged consensus, brought in some reforms that mean that millions of our children now are better off, right? Now, but that's a conservative way
By what metric?
Do it. It's not about throwing more money at the problem. It's about reforming the system to get better outcomes, and that's what I would do with education as well.
To our water supply in England, it is now at record pollution levels and in some cases record waste. There is a move that water bosses who continually pollute the water and ignore waste should go to jail. Yes or no?
Well, I think we've just passed a bill that puts very stiff penalties and fines.
Yes or no, Rishi? Yes or no? Send them to jail if they're polluters. The answer's obviously yes, but you don't want to say it.
On those company directors and hold them liable for those. I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer to making something a criminal offence in the middle of a leadership campaign, but I do think water companies should be held to a very high standard. We've passed legislation to do that.
But not necessarily...
There's a really easy way of holding the water supply to a high standard, and that's bring it into public ownership so you have direct control.
Not necessarily, because I don't know enough to know that that is the right course of action for what is a civil matter, but I do think they should face very stiff penalties, and that's what we've done.
Finally, you talked on this section, you talked a lot about rebuilding trust. Everybody in this room knows so much crime is driven by the drug trade. I have to ask you, have you ever used illegal drugs?
No.
Thank you for that.
Boo, what a fucking nerd. I am completely fucking straight edge, and even I've done a little bit of weed.
Let's move on. Your opponent, Liz Truss, has said how she would beat strikes and strikers. How would you?
I think in the same way, because we have a manifesto.
Do explain.
We have a manifesto commitment that I would like to deliver on, which would legislate for a minimum level of service for critical industries.
Well, clearly regulation hasn't worked so far, though. That's the real issue.
Like rail. That's something that we've promised to do anyway, and we should get on and do that.
Okay. Can I talk to you a bit about Boris Johnson? The Ukrainian President Zelensky has said, I want him, Mr. Johnson, to be somewhere in politics in a position to be someone. I don't want him to disappear. The decision is in the hands of the British people. Were you to become Prime Minister, would you deploy him as our envoy to Ukraine or something else? And what would his skill set be?
Well, I'm not sure if he'd want to do any of those things, Nick, but he obviously is someone who has enormous talents, and I'm sure can continue making...
No, what Boris Johnson wants to do is what the Conservative Party's like internal HQ are trying to do, which is offer a lordship to any MP in a safe seat who will give up their seat for Boris Johnson, so that he doesn't have to stand in Uxbridge where he will almost certainly lose.
A contribution to public life.
So you would support him if he wanted to become the Ukrainian?
I thought you were quoting Warren Buffett sensibly. I'm not Warren G. Oh dear.
Envoy to Ukraine.
I'm not going to sit here and try and allocate jobs to people. I don't think that would be appropriate. But I think actually now we do need to move forward. I've already been clear. I don't see that being a role in the cabinet. But I'm sure Boris will continue to have a role in public life. He's an extraordinary figure, and I'm sure he's got a lot more to give.
So you wouldn't offer him a job?
Not in the cabinet, no.
Okay. He spoke today of periods of difficulty being inevitable, and I think we've referenced people will be looking at £500 per month for energy bills. What is to be done?
Well, as we already talked about, there's support that I already announced as Chancellor that will help people through the autumn and winter. It's particularly targeted on the most vulnerable. And we can go further as bills seem now to be higher than people expected earlier.
It's not just like dishing out money from the state that then gets hoovered up by these incredibly large energy giants that have made billions in pounds in profit. This is completely wasteful, and again, it will just prove him to be nothing but a cuck for these businesses. Which is a Tory, of course.
And that's why cutting VAT on fuel will put extra money in people's pockets.
Last question on Boris Johnson, I assure you. It's reported around 14,000 members of the Conservative Party want his name back on the ballot. What would...
Oh, Plenty of applause there.
What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say to them that I think close to 60 people resigned in Parliament. And it's incumbent on the Prime Minister to have the confidence of the parliamentary party, and that wasn't there at the end. So whether he's on the ballot or not, ultimately you need to be able to command the confidence of your MPs in Parliament, and we got to a point where close to 60 of them had resigned from government.
You'll have your questions, sir. I heard something over there. I promise you'll have your time for questions, in fact, in just about 4 or 5 minutes. Mr Sunak, you've made much of the furlough programme that you introduced, some £70 billion, if I understand. But fraud runs at, I understand, £15.7 billion. How does that make you fiscally responsible? By my maths, that's around 20%.
That's completely wrong.
Those figures are wrong?
Completely wrong. There was a report that was published just the other day that shows that the percentage of fraud and error in the furlough programme, it looks like it is now even lower than the fraud and error in normal government
That comes
schemes.
from the Public Affairs Accounts Committee.
Literally, HMRC just published a report the other week.
All right, we'll check that.
So you can go and check
that.
We
will.
Yep, so
You wanted to crack down on COVID fraud. You set up, I understand, a task force with 1,000 investigators.
Fraud is bad, but corruption, that's not a problem.
Costing £100 million. How much has that brought back?
I think, well, I'm not there anymore, actually, Nick.
Well, it wasn't that long ago.
No, but it was on course to collect, I think, over £1 billion, and I'm not sure how much of that had already happened. It may be that it's doing better than that.
Over £1 million, did you say?
£1 billion.
£1 billion?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you're hoping to get around £1 billion back?
As I said, when I was there, that was what it was projected to do.
Okay. There's something about image in politics, whether you like it or not. You have Prada shoes, you have photo opportunities.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense, does it, JDM? Yeah, he's pretty useless, isn't he?
Opportunities with a car that's not yours, and you seem to have trouble paying for the petrol. You pull pints for the cameras even though you're teetotal, and you kept a green card while living in Downing Street. What does that make you look? What does that say to the Conservative Party members?
Well, actually, I think, as I've talked about this in the past...
It literally says to the Conservative Party members, I am one of you. I have loads of expensive stuff, and I've never met a person who's working class in my fucking life. As we've seen from the video that exposed him in the... saying he didn't even have any working class friends growing up.
I think this is not about what shoes I wear or what suit I'm wearing. This is about what I'm going to be able to do for the country. And thank you. So we're a party that celebrates hard work and aspiration and wealth creation. Those are the values that I...
It's all right when you marry someone who's almost a billionaire.
...will champion as Prime Minister.
Some reports suggest, going back to COVID, that your Eat Out to Help Out programme led to, some reports suggest, a 17% spike in COVID infections. With hindsight, which is great, of course, was it a mistake?
No.
God forbid. Would you do something like that again?
I mean, if you think what happened is almost every country in Europe ended up having exactly the same spike in infections thereafter.
Yes, because they all failed to understand how the message that was being given from the COVID experts, and all came out of lockdown too soon. Like, this is just everybody did this wrong. I'm not going to hold it against the guy, right? I'm not going to hold it against him. But, like, that is just how it went down. Hey, North Countryman, hope you're doing well.
Every single one of them ended up putting more restrictions in place afterwards. So it's hard to say that that was the difference. But I'll tell you what was the situation at the time. We had a situation where 2 million jobs...
True, we did have a larger and earlier spike, yeah. But, like, you know, like, people weren't... When people were making these kind of decisions, it was difficult at the time, right? Like, he's hardly as culpable as somebody like Boris fuck business Johnson, and then Boris let the bodies pile high or whatever. Like... I'm gonna, even me, fucking cynical old gnarled brain socialist like me, I can even cut him some slack for, you know, trying to get the economy going or whatever at that point by trying to get people out. Got some cheap food at the very least.
...in hospitality were at risk. And we had an industry which was on the brink of mass bankruptcies. We had a situation in this country where people were far more fearful of going out again, because of various reasons, more so than any other country, and I did not want those jobs to be lost, because disproportionately that industry employs people who are on lower incomes, who are younger, who are from difficult backgrounds, who are moving off unemployment. So actually, as a matter of social justice, for me, those 2 million jobs were really...
Oh, yeah, that is probably a bigger story, yeah. Like, resisting the lockdowns when you've got the spike, that's far more objectionable than the policies you put in place after lifting the first lockdown has been decided, right? By resisting that second lockdown in the face of rising like spike in infections and a spike in deaths, that's the real thing that you've got to come at him for.
Really important to try and save.
I sense the last question from me, or certainly the last but one. I think you'd probably allow that your senior colleague Ben Wallace would bring a lot of support to your campaign or to your opponents. If Mr. Wallace were to be watching now, what would you say to the Defence Secretary to bring about him to support you?
No, I'm sure Ben will make up his own mind. But when it comes to the topic more broadly of defence spending, I was a Chancellor that supported Ben with the largest uplift in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. And we did that before we had settled any other department in the middle of COVID, because it was incredibly important. And I was also the Chancellor that ensured that we supported Ben to get £2 billion worth of support to Ukraine to stand up to Russian aggression.
You know I'm going to hold you to a number. We heard earlier that your opponent would look at a 3% increase over a period of time. Can I get a number from you, Mr. Sunak?
No, because I don't believe in arbitrary targets. And what I've said is our approach to defence spending should be threat-based. And if Ben Wallace was here, if you told him, Ben, I'm going to give you 3% tomorrow, what would you do with it? He would tell you, I can't spend it, is what he would do if you told him that and if he was sitting here. Because
yeah, Wallace is back, Liz Truss.
But I will spend whatever it takes to keep our country safe. And I'm not going to sit here and get into some auction of more tax cuts and higher targets.
Okay.
Yeah, North Countryman, the last time a Prime Minister was both elected in and elected out of like number 10 was back in 1974. It was Ted Heath. That's correct, North Countryman. Yeah, the last time a PM was changed by an election was in 2010, and the last time a PM was changed by an election both at the start and end of their term was Ted Heath.
On a lighter note, prediction for the football on Sunday, England v Germany?
Der Klassik, as it's being called. Yes.
Well done.
Well, there we go. Yeah, no, well, you know, Lions victory, here we come.
A Lions win?
Obviously. I mean,
okay. When did you last go to a women's pro game?
Gosh, I don't know, actually. I don't know. I'm a Saints fan, and...
Probably never, is what I mean. My guess here, Rishi. Fishy Rishi.
That's my team. The last football match I went to in this job was the European finals.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Round of applause, please, for Mr. Sunak taking my questions. More importantly... Thank you, Mr. Sunak.
Thank you.
Right, now, who's got our question, please? Right. Okay, there's a lady there in a blue and white striped top. No, you've been usurped. One of the two. No, it is the lady in the blue and white top. Let's start the clock now. Just your first name, if you would. And
what's it to start the clock? What is it? Some kind of game show?
Question to Mr. Sunak.
Hi.
Say your name again. I'm so sorry.
It's Laura.
Laura, go ahead, Mr. Sunak.
Hi. Will you...
Whatever you want, sir. Whatever you feel comfortable.
Will you outright ban greyhound racing, or at least consider the ban, considering it is a vile and abusive sport?
Asking the big questions, I see. Let's fucking go. Greyhound racing, topic of the day. No cost of living crisis. Let's forget about that.
Well, to be perfectly honest, it's not something that I've looked into in any great detail. So, you know, I'm happy to look at all our laws to make sure that we're treating animals properly. As
Laura, in a sentence, why should it be banned? In a sentence, if you would.
Thousands and thousands of dogs are abused every year, and are culled, and for every three that's on every one.
Like, how can you expect him to make up a policy about greyhound racing when he's never researched it on the spot? I guarantee you that the answer is going to be, I can't make any firm commitments. I've never looked into it, but I will put it on the agenda for the future.
Track to have died.
Right, that's a horrific... I mean, in fairness, Mr. Sunak, it's not a question even I've heard often. But it's something
you know what, as I said, I'm happy to look into it. For the first time, I'm a dog owner, because a year ago, my kids and wife conspired against me, and we got a new dog for the first time in my life, so I am...
God, stop telling us fucking stories from your home life. Jesus.
Happily in your camp.
I trust you're a dog lover now.
Now I'm a dog lover.
Yeah.
So
don't lose the audience.
No. Well, it was the best thing that happened to our family in a long time, so it's very good. So I'm very much happy to look into that, because obviously now...
Is he putting on a fake posh accent? I've never seen him speak this poshly. Is he putting it on for the Conservative membership?
Now that Nova is a part of our life, the idea that someone would be abusive to dogs is something that I find personally obviously very difficult.
May I ask the breed? Nova's breed. What is it?
She's a Fox Red Lab.
Fox Red Lab. OK, sir. White blazer to your left, Mr. Sunak. Your name, sir?
Yeah, thank you. Rishi, I'm a councillor for Selby District Council, Business and Communities, very passionate about businesses. And how do you feel about keeping the small business relief, as so many businesses so rely on it? If you became Prime Minister, would you consider scrapping that or continuing it? Because I think a lot of businesses, particularly on the high street, would close without that relief, particularly after COVID.
Yes, you know what, you're totally right, and that's why as Chancellor I made sure that this year there's a 50% discount on business rates for retail and hospitality businesses to help them recover from COVID, because they are the beating hearts of all our high streets. And as you heard me talk about Eat Out to Help Out earlier, I'm a passionate supporter of high streets and the hospitality industry. But we also can do some other things. We need to make sure that digital companies are paying fair taxes, and as Chancellor I organise a deal with lots of other countries to ensure that our large online companies pay fair taxes to level the playing field. Thank you.
Yeah, they definitely should have had a swivel chair. You're absolutely right, North Countryman.
And And we also need to support businesses to grow, which is why I created a program called Help to Grow, so that small and medium-sized businesses can get management training and mini MBAs and figure out how to use new software to help their businesses make more money and grow. So that's how, in a new 21st century economy, we've got to support your businesses, help them to grow, and that's what I'll do as PM.
All right. Mr. Sunak, you stay seated. I'm going to get up to work at the back of the room, but while I do, take a question if you would. Lady in a grey top. Your name if you would first, please.
Teresa.
Hello, Teresa.
Hello, Mr. Sunak. What I'm interested in is how you're going to control the illegal immigration with the dinghies coming over, a civil service that doesn't want to actually cooperate, a border force that doesn't want to turn boats around, Macron who's emptying his country. So we can't afford it, and we've also got a processing issue.
I mean, we definitely can afford it if you just open up the legal routes. Let them be able to claim asylum by coming onto the by not having to go through the boats, which they're forcing them to by not having any legal routes with which to get through, and then we'd avoid all of this. Then they go through the asylum process, and then if they don't pass, then they can leave. Like as the asylum process is supposed to go, like that we helped draft as part of the UN Council.
Issue of a big backlog. So I'd like to hear in detail how you're going to do it.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you asked the question, because as you heard me in my opening remarks, that's one of the things that I want to grip as quickly as possible as PM. And if you've got 5 minutes when you go home tonight, find my website. There's a video that I've put out that explains a very detailed 10-point plan on how to do it. So some of the things that we need to do quickly, what we need to do is change the definition of what counts as asylum, and we should move away from the very expansive
We can't change. That's the United Nations definition of asylum.
ECHR definition, which allows people to claim all sorts of spurious reasons for being here, and move to the tighter definition under something called the Refugee Convention, as other countries do. That will help us ensure that we can remove people when we want to. Secondly, we should make our foreign...
I forget. No, he is right there. Sorry, I've been made to look very silly by Rishi there by him preempting the question the answer that I gave and then correcting me on it. Whilst him being recorded and me being live, so I've been made to look very stupid there. But at the end of the day, that is the conditions by which that they can claim asylum, not the fact that they can be an asylum seeker in the first place. They still have to be able to get here to then claim asylum. You claim asylum. You get to the safe country that you want to travel to. It doesn't have to be the first. It can be whichever one you want to. You get there, you claim asylum, and then the asylum claim either gets accepted or denied. It's just really, really simple.
Policy more linked to people taking back failed asylum seekers. If we're going to trade with countries on a preferential basis, if we're going to provide aid to countries, they really should be taking back asylum seekers that we want to make sure are not here anymore. That's not happening currently. We need to improve the current system because it takes...
The point is that the person who asked the question doesn't want to know about past or failed asylum seekers. They want to stop people getting to the country at all. They want to make sure that no one ever gets to the country in the first place. That's what they want.
Far too long to get people through it. We can use technology to help us do that, but we also need to look at our rates of rejection and acceptance. And if you compare us to all the other countries in Europe, subject to all the same rules, somehow we reject far fewer asylum seekers than all those other countries. So something is not working in the system, and I will get a grip of that.
Oh no, 20,000 new people in the country. Whatever next?
That as well. But if you've got 5 minutes, go home. There's a 10-point plan that I've put out in a video. But I'm the product, as I said, of this country's compassionate, welcoming embrace to millions of people over
Which is why I want to kick people out.
Years. Of course we're going to keep doing that, but we must have a system of control for our borders. Immigration should be legal, it should be orderly, it should be controlled, and that's what I'll deliver.
And just...
If you're saying it can be legal, that means nothing. You get to choose what is legal and what isn't. Or I'm going to make sure everything's legal by making sure that it is legal for me to go out with a gun and shoot them in the boats if they're coming across the channel theoretically in the video game Minecraft. Like that's that. If you make it legal, that's a legal way of doing it. That's nothing. Please speak based upon the utility.
And just on a final point, under your prime ministership, how many people do you think you would manage to get to Rwanda, to the programme there, and in what time span, Mr. Sunak?
Well, that's a right policy, but we do need to make it work. And over time, I hope it can be scaled up. But it's right that we start with a pilot.
Gone. It can't be scaled down. No one's gone.
Well, that's because, yeah.
That's because no one fucking knows. No one has any idea about how the immigration laws actually work in this country, let alone me. Right? I know basic stuff. Probably know more than these Conservative membership, but the way they've managed to spin this lefty lawyers blocking Rwanda plan because of the European Court of Human Rights stuff. It's so fucking pernicious because it's all just essentially based on lies, specifically so that they can try and extricate themselves from the European Court of Human Rights to be able to turn it into the sweatshop of Europe.
We've got challenges, as we always knew we had, and when we've designed that policy...
You believe you will be able to, under your watch, you will get people to Rwanda, but you'll decline to give me a number?
Well, because we have to build it up over time, right? Okay. So, but it's part of it is a new Bill of Rights that we're actually about to put through Parliament. Part of it is my idea to change the definition, and I said there's other things that we can do that will...
You might want to swing round.
Right, who have we got over here?
With a blue... Oh, there we go. He's got your name on the T-shirt.
There we go.
I don't know that happened.
Look at the classic gammon Tory voter. One in the bottom left-hand corner, Laugh, like, one in the middle of your picture as well. They're fucking everywhere. It's actually just fucking the gammon like this is like Comic-Con for gammons.
There we go.
Rishi, we're out of the European Union, but we're seeing a real threat to our own union with a lot of sabre rattling in regard to Scotland. How are you going to keep Scotland in the UK?
Yeah,
by forcing them, by not giving them a referendum.
That's an absolutely vital question. And we're under real risk. The most, the best things we can do are be firm with Nicola Sturgeon.
God, the people in this audience, you would just never tire of shouting out. God, they all look like people that you just like, the most tedious members of the public you've ever met in your fucking life.
About another referendum. We need to make sure that in government...
It's true, he does look like a less charming Jen Broadbent. You're 100% correct, North Countryman.
That we don't just devolve and forget, which for many years has been the institutional imperative, where we just push things over to them and then we forget about it. Now, we as
look
UK...
at this, look at that guy second from the right. Oh, you can't see him, my chat's covering up, sorry.
Government ministers have to be more active in Scotland. We have to be more active about delivering benefits on the ground to the people in Scotland and working constructively there to do that. And crucially, when you're countering nationalism, we can't just talk in arguments to do with our head. Now, it's easy to talk about borrowing and debt and trade and pensions and currency, but ultimately nationalism is a seductive and romantic idea. So we have got to make arguments about the union that speak to people's hearts and speak to their emotions. Because if we focus just on the practicalities, we will not be successful. And I think we can do that. Because my grandparents, when they emigrated here, they didn't emigrate to England. They didn't emigrate here because it was geography or lines on a map. They emigrated to the United Kingdom. And that's because it represented a
true, very true, North Countryman.
Set of values and ideas. And it's those values and ideas that are precious and that form the bonds of union. And those are the values which we must defend.
So literally edge what I said, but more flowery language. They're going to force them by not giving them the referendum. He absolutely believes in British exceptionalism. Very, very true.
When Nicola Sturgeon says Boris Johnson has done great damage to the United Kingdom, the Union, is she right?
Well, Boris Johnson has made sure, actually, that we passed a piece of legislation that allows us now, for the first time, to actively go and do things in Scotland and demonstrate the benefit of the Union in places like Scotland. He deserves credit for that, and that is now allowing us to do something that we could never do before, and it's making a real difference on the ground.
So where should the Northern Ireland trade border be?
We don't need to have a border in Northern Ireland. We should have free-flowing trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and we should have free-flowing trade between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland.
But it's not working currently.
And that's what we need to fix, and we will fix it.
And you'll fix it in a sentence,
yes,
how?
We will.
But how?
We've got a bill in Parliament that will fix it.
You're confident that will work?
Yes.
We have a question. Gentleman in a blue suit, I think. Sir.
Good evening. Thank
your
you.
name, if you would, your first name.
Henry from Tatton in Cheshire, just on the edge of Manchester Airport. This party has been brilliant in its vision for the Northern Powerhouse, for net zero and for levelling up. But this isn't being delivered and isn't at the centre of this campaign. And the Treasury seems
because it involves government doing stuff. They don't want the government to do stuff.
to the North as a cost, not a great value for money investment. Please give us the detail on how you will secure green investment and growth to truly deliver net zero and levelling up in partnership with local communities and businesses.
So Henry, I'm going to actually completely disagree with you, right? So I've been in charge of the Treasury for the last 2.5 years. I'm the most northern chancellor that this party has had for something like 70-odd years.
What? You grew up in Southampton, went to school in Winchester and to college in Oxford, and then got fucking parachuted in to the Richmond seat because someone gave up their seat so they could keep you in, they could keep you safe. What is you you're more northern than fucking Sajid Javid? Pull the other one, mate. It's got bells on.
Years. I'm the Chancellor that put the Treasury in Darlington. Not just in the north, but also not in a big city where everyone expected it to go, but to a place like Darlington to demonstrate our commitment to it. I'm the Chancellor that signed off
So you did something that means actual nothing in real terms, but was literally just a virtue signal.
Largest investment in rail infrastructure across the north. Right? I'm also the Chancellor that you talked about green energy, created a free port using the freedoms that we had from Brexit to come up with a brand new policy.
No, we could have made free ports in the European Union. There are plenty of free ports in the European Union.
That right now in Teesside is attracting investment and jobs in the industries of the future, in offshore wind, in hydrogen, in carbon capture and storage. And if you just think back 5 years ago to a place like Teesside, we had lost a steel
Also, carbon capture is useless.
plant. 5,000 people lost their jobs. And you look at it now, it's a place that is brimming with opportunity and optimism about the future. Now, I work with people like Ben Houchin and local people there to help deliver that, and I want to bring that same degree of optimism and excitement across this country and across the north. I've done it as Chancellor, and I will definitely do it as Prime Minister.
Right. You've not done this. You've got nothing. You've done nothing. How can you say that you're on my record as Chancellor when you know all the Northern Powerhouse stuff never fucking happened?
Would you support relocating the House of Lords in the north? And why not?
Because I don't think it makes sense for the practical operation of government for us to be separated.
We go over this side of the room. Gentleman in a blue shirt. Your name, sir?
Stuart.
Hello, Stuart.
Hi, Stuart.
Hi, Rishi. At the tail end of your chancellorship, you had differences of view with Johnson about finances. However, Johnson supported Ukraine right from the front, and he led this country. Would you do all that it takes to support Ukraine so that we defeat Putin?
The quick answer is absolutely yes. And I made sure that
Definitely
we got
me
the
too,
funding
JDM.
across government to provide to Ukraine to get them the arms they needed to stand up to Putin. I worked with Ben to prioritise funding so that he could do that. But I also worked with all my finance ministers around the world to put together a sanctions package, the likes of which we have never seen. And you all know those sanctions are all economic in nature. They target
Yeah, a sanctions package that allowed all of the oligarchs to take all of their wealth out before that you sanctioned them. You could have just requisitioned all those fucking properties they have, like huge amounts of money invested in the city in London, could you? No, but no, can't be doing that. That's commie shit.
Target the central bank's reserves. They target gold. They target Russian companies. They target their access to international capital markets. Right. So those are all things that I worked on with Janet Yellen, with my fellow colleagues in Europe, because they work better when we do them together. So that I've got a track record of making sure that we genuinely support Ukraine, not just directly with arms, but also that we tighten the vice on Russia to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position. That's what I did as Chancellor, and I can assure you that I will continue to do that as PM.
You mentioned Vladimir Putin. Were you to meet him face to face as Prime Minister, what would you say, Mr. Sunak?
I mean, there's at this point not much to be said. I mean, what we need to do is put Ukraine in the strongest possible position so that they can sit down.
I mean, some people say stop. Some people say.
I think we've said that already, right? So
Okay.
I think we need action, not words, at this point. And the action we need is the toughest possible sanctions to make life as difficult for him as possible, and the strongest possible support for Ukraine so that they can defend themselves and push back. Now, if we do both of those things, we put Ukraine in the strongest position to then try and find a resolution to the conflict.
And to those who say it's Russia who in some way is benefiting from some of those sanctions, how would you respond? Is that a fair critique?
We need to find ways to do the sanctions in a more intelligent way, because ultimately...
They're not intelligent now?
Well, the problem with energy prices at the moment, we're all seeing it. We're all paying very high energy prices. So we are all paying a price. That is how we are all sacrificing to support Ukraine. And Russia is still able to make money from the energy, because in the short term, the prices are very high, and we haven't been able to completely remove ourselves from it.
Okay.
So, but what we can do, actually, and one of the things I was working on with my colleagues to smarter sanctions, is to look at whether we could put in place a price cap. So actually, if we could have a buyer's cartel in the world where everyone would agree to pay a fixed amount for Russian energy and enforce that through secondary sanctions, which we were working on how to do, that would be a way to make sure we get the energy we need at prices that are far better for us and deprive Russia of revenue that is funding its war effort. Now, that is not an easy thing to do, but that is the kind of evolution in the sanctions that we should try and do.
All right, thank you for that. We're going to stay with the right-hand side of the room geographically, I assure you. Gentleman, again, in a blue shirt, I think, sir. Your name, if you would.
Good evening, I'm Matthew from West Yorkshire.
Hello.
Rishi Sunak, you're a good salesman and you have many strong attributes, but many people continue to support Boris Johnson, who has delivered consistently through treacherous waters, and many people unfortunately see that you've stabbed him in the back. He is the man who made you as a senior politician, and some people don't want to see that in number 10. You're going to have to take...
Yeah, literally, this was the guy who set up his own campaign website to be leader in November last year, before any kind of trigger process for Boris Johnson.
The party in the country through another general election. And, I'm not quite sure entirely which planet you're on. David Davis, neither. How do you expect to take the party through the next general election based upon those actions? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Matthew, for asking the question. So why did I resign? It was a very difficult decision. It wasn't one I took lightly. And you're right, I'm very grateful to the PM for giving me the job of Chancellor. But
yeah, because the Prime Minister had been exposed for covering up for promoting a serial sexual predator. Like, come on, like, of course he was going to resign his position.
You also saw over the past 2.5 years, I gave my everything to that job. And I'm proud of my record as Chancellor, delivering for this country, delivering for all of you, and made sure that we got through coronavirus. I also was proud to be part of his government that achieved many things. And as I said previously, I do believe he was the only person who could have broken the Brexit gridlock and delivered that election victory. But for me personally, it got to a point where I couldn't stay. As a gentleman previously also said, I had a significant difference of opinion with him on how to handle the economic challenges that are ahead of us. And at a situation like that...
It was definitely because of the economic challenge, the decisions that you had to make between the two of you because you couldn't agree. And definitely wasn't because you knew that you were heading into like electoral oblivion if you stuck with Boris Johnson till the end. Because of all of the absolute fucking horrendous shit that he did.
Could stay. Right? There is no way that a Prime Minister and Chancellor cannot be joined at the hip with regard to economic policy, particularly at a time when the economy faces real challenges. So I was left with no choice but to resign, and I'm sad that I had to, but that was the right thing to do, and that was me acting on my principles. Now, you ask about bringing the party back together. Now, that is a fair question, and that's the right question. So all I'd point you in the direction of is look at the support that I've drawn. I have the largest support across the parliamentary party, and that support is drawn from every part of the parliamentary party. It's drawn from people who supported Brexit, people who supported Remain, people in the north, people in the south, people in rural areas, people in urban areas, MPs who have been around for a very long time and are very senior, and new MPs. So I'm confident that I am well placed to bring the party back together because I've already drawn support from across the party, and I will build a team that draws on all the talents and traditions of our parliamentary party, because the challenges that our country faces right now are too great for us not to do that and build the best possible team to meet them, and that's what I will do.
You are aware you're trailing Liz Truss in the ratings at the moment to be leader of the party.
I did mention that, Nick,
Yes,
earlier on.
Yes, so you are aware of that, though, the hill that must be climbed. Just to the sentiment, did you stab Boris Johnson in the back, lastly, on that question?
I resigned because the Prime Minister and Chancellor cannot be on a different place when it comes to economic policy, and we were due.
It's such a cop-out answer. We all know it was because of the Pincher scandal. We all know it was because of the electoral chances of the Tory party under Boris Johnson. We all know that. Stop making shit up, Rishi.
To try and outline an economic policy for the country going
so it wasn't
forward.
An act of treachery.
And everyone knows there was a speech that was due to be given, and as we were talking about what should go into that speech, it was clear we had very different points of view. Okay. And so I was left with no choice.
Last couple of minutes together. A young lady in a black top. No, sir, I'm afraid it's a young lady in a black top. Thank you. Your name?
Hi Rishi, my name's Annabelle, and on paper I should have probably have voted Labour. I come from a single parent household, I'm a working class woman, and one thing that really got my mum through hard times was benefits. Now, a lot of people see benefits as a long-term pay packet instead of a short-term solution like my mother did. So what would you do to stop benefits getting into the wrong hands for lazy people who just want to sit on their back?
That's true. I bet there's so much like dirt on Rishi that he has to tip. I mean, I guess probably fucking every Tory MP. There's probably like an absolute fucking reams and reams of dirt that they all have on each other. They're just waiting to pounce if they ever do misstep. Or they're enjoying this turkey here, willingly telling everybody why she absolutely adores Christmas. Why Christmas is her favourite time of the year.
Backside all day. And how would you ensure that it gets to people that really need it?
I think the last bit, ensure it gets to people who really need it, was it?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I honestly, I have no idea how that she can say such things when people have been on benefits, when literally like tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of people died because of the Tory party's anti-benefits fucking reign of terror in 2010 to 2016. I don't know how she can sit there and be a Tory party member. It's fucking crazy to me that these people willingly vote for their own demise.
Well, nice to see you, and amazing job to your mum. I don't know if she's here or not, but that's an incredibly tough thing that she's done, and she's obviously brought up an amazingly confident daughter, so enormously to her credit. Now, I completely agree with you. And just before I was leaving as Chancellor, I spent time trying to figure out how to tighten up our benefit system, because right now we've got more people claiming unemployment benefit than we had before coronavirus, and yet...
Yeah, well, hang on a minute. But I thought you said that it was the first time that we'd had more people in work than there are job vacancies. Sorry, there were fewer people seeking work than there were job vacancies. I thought the employment market was doing really well under the Conservative Party. So isn't it weird how unemployment benefits are higher than they were pre-pandemic? It's almost like there's a bunch of people who are finding it very difficult to afford to live because their work doesn't pay them enough, because we don't live in this high-wage, high-skill economy that you guys told us that you'd give us. So it's really weird how the benefits are going up, even though unemployment is going down. Does that sound like a failure of the entire basis of the neoliberal economy? Is that an externality of neoliberalism? No, it can't be.
We've got an economy that is crying out for workers. Now, that can't be right. And that's why I, as Chancellor, pushed the departments to find ways to change things. We used to have a system where people could sit around for months before taking a job and nothing would happen to them. That was wrong, and we changed that to be a matter of weeks. The next thing I want to change is something else that you will all be shocked to hear. So if you're claiming unemployment benefit, if you work just 9 hours on the minimum wage, you are then freed of all the conditions, all the obligations on you to check in at your job centre, to take more work. Nothing happens to you if you say no. Now that clearly is wrong, because people like your mum, who are working really, really hard, those are the people we need to support. So as Prime Minister, I will...
But all the people who just sit around owning property and making huge amounts of money every year, doing literal nothing, they're fine, aren't they?
Completely change that threshold. I've already said I would double it. Because if you're taking money from the taxpayer at a time when the economy needs workers and we need to combat inflation, you should be
No, it doesn't need workers. The economy, if you literally were running on the fact that unemployment is incredibly low, which it is. Unemployment is at its lowest point since Jim Callaghan was Prime Minister, right? We have the lowest unemployment for an incredibly long time. That's part of the reason why inflation is an issue, right? Because of how low the unemployment is. The last thing that the very few people who are even left on benefits, which is very, very few people who are out of work and out on benefits, is so minuscule in comparison to the people who are in work and don't earn enough money so that they need benefits to be able to claim. Like, again, how someone who came from a family who needed to rely on benefits is demonizing the sector of the people who are the most vulnerable because the employment market is so tight. Oh God, these people, honestly, it's just, again, crab bucket mentality, isn't it? Nothing can get better. Everything has to get worse. We must punish people to the maximum that we can just because we think that that's the right thing to do. Because if someone's got a fucked up moral compass. God, these people enrage me. They make me so angry.
The jobs that are on offer. So I think as Conservatives, that's our approach. We need to do exactly that.
We're going...
Right, OK.
One more.
We've got one more.
We have time for one more. We've got about just a minute and a bit. Sir, blue shirt, blue blazer, green trousers. An interesting combination.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you, Norman.
God, that guy's a fucking zombie.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Well,
my name is Derek from Godsolne County, Lancashire, Bury in Lancashire.
Well done, Derek.
In 1975, Margaret Thatcher appointed a very senior past politician, really, in Peter Thornycroft as party chairman. He served as chairman of the party for 6 years. I can think of a very good Yorkshireman who would serve a similar role if he could be persuaded. How about it?
OK. For some of us, let us in on the secret, Mr. Sunak.
I think the gentleman was talking about my predecessor. William Hague.
Ah, right, yes.
So
how much love is there in the room for Mr. Hague? Mr.
Sunak. William is one of the, I think, the greatest
Very true,
Conservative politicians, leaders and statesmen that we've ever had. He's also been an incredibly kind supporter to me, and I've got nothing but respect and admiration for him. But you are a better man than I if you think we can persuade him back into politics in the front line. But it would be enormously beneficial to all of us if he was open to that, and I'll ask him. So what about that?
That's fair enough. Derek, thank you for your question and having a sense of humour. And I'm sorry we have strict time limits. Could I please ask, ladies and gentlemen, members, your appreciation, please. Rishi Sunak.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sunak. Thank you very much. Thank you. OK, sir. See you again.
I just hate Tories. I just hate Tories so much. I just despise them. They're just the worst people in the country.
OK, just to remind you, thank you very much indeed. Liz Truss will be out here in just a minute. We're just slightly rearranging the set. Thank you, that was great. I apologise now. I know I didn't get to all your questions. A lot of you are glaring at me. We will, of course, have another go with the other candidates, so sorry for that. And just to remind you, of course, this is out on LBC and Global Player, and of course everyone is watching this across the whole of the country. So hopefully that's got us enough time. It has, so please, appreciation for your other candidate, Liz Truss.
She's doing the pork markets face again.
A powerful entrance there. Lovely. So I was going to
pork markets.
get a kiss there. No, we'll leave that away. Well, all right. Well, there we go. While I've had a kiss from someone who's going to lead the Conservative Party, but that's another story. Thank you very much indeed. Question number one, Liz Truss. In February, the Kremlin put Russian nuclear forces on high alert.
I have subs in chat. Why aren't you posting the pork markets emotes?
Due to some comments that you made. If you were Prime Minister, would you accidentally walk us into World War III?
Yes. Yes, she would. 100%. No doubt. No shot that she would.
The fact that Russia have spread propaganda about me is, I think, a sign that the strength the United Kingdom has shown in leading the free world in the fight against Russia and supporting Ukraine has had a real impact. And I take it as a badge of pride that I've been sanctioned by the Russian regime. We have stood up to Russia, and we've not just stood up ourselves, we've encouraged our allies in the free world to stand up to this appalling regime. And it's completely wrong to listen to any of the saber-rattling or propaganda. The reason they're doing that is that Putin's evil plans to take Kyiv in a few days didn't work. And we were at the forefront of exposing the intelligence, showing what he was up to, disclosing Russia's plans. that helped the Ukrainians, but it also helped us win the global argument.
I hear you, but I remind you, nuclear forces. Did not that not concern you, Liz Truss?
Well, look, I don't believe that listening to Russian propaganda and repeating it helps to
Oh, we are so doomed. She's gonna cause nuclear war. No! Save yourselves right now. Run away.
deliver the Ukrainians' victory against Russia. Putin has said all kinds of things. There's been all kinds of saber rattling. But what we've seen is that when the United Kingdom and the West have taken a tough stance, he has retreated. So
yeah, just as long as you know which one's the Black Sea and which one's the Baltic Sea, then we're going to be, oh, shit.
For example, he said there'd be terrible consequences if Finland and Sweden join NATO. We were at the front of the pack helping them join NATO. Nothing has happened. So we've got to not take what he says seriously and look at what Russia did. And the fact is that the West was asleep for too many years. Okay. We didn't do enough about Crimea. We didn't do enough about the Donbass. And if we don't stand up to him now, he will come back for more.
I mean, literally, this is her saying, ha, Russia said they were never going to do anything about Finland and Sweden joining NATO. Huh. That we showed them by doing it anyway, and they did nothing. And she's literally like taunting them into launching the fucking ICBMs. God, she's gonna kill us all.
All right, you won't need reminding. Perhaps some of our listeners or viewers or people in the room, you had senior roles under Theresa May, Justice Secretary, Chief Secretary of the Treasury, and Boris Johnson, International Trade Secretary, and of course Foreign Secretary. You said earlier that you're straight talking. Here's a straight question. Who was better?
Well, I've served 3 different prime ministers. I also worked for David Cameron as well as Theresa May. Look, put it this way, in the 2016 leadership election, after the referendum, I backed Boris first, and then I backed Theresa May once Boris had left the race. I've always been a fan of Boris Johnson. I think he did a fantastic job.
Literally just telling the British public, who like universally hate Boris Johnson outside of the Tory membership, that she supports all the shit that went previously.
Was Prime Minister, he delivered Brexit, he delivered on the vaccine, and I was proud to serve as a loyal member of his cabinet.
All right, I'll take Boris. I'll take Boris as your suggestion. Can I talk to you about inheritance tax, Liz Truss? Last year, the Treasury received a record £5.4 billion from the duty. The Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, says that could rise to a whisker under £7 billion in a couple of years' time. Many people call it a death tax. What would you do about inheritance tax?
Well, I think our tax system in Britain isn't working. It's too complicated. It's even more complicated than the American tax system, which we know is a nightmare. So what I would do is have a complete review of the tax system. I want to make it fairer for families. So if people take time out of work to look after children or elderly relatives, they're not penalised. And I would also look at inheritance tax as part of that review, because I said earlier...
What do you mean look at, Liz
Well, I mean, I'd look at the overall tax.
My policy on inheritance tax is spend it or lose it. If you don't spend it, it all goes to the state. Fuck off.
Tax system in the round and make sure it's fair. And my view of fairness is we need to reward people who do the right thing, who work hard, who set up businesses, who earn money, and who want to pass it on to their children. So I would look at it again, but I need to look at it in the round. I've already made some immediate tax commitments, reversing the national insurance increase, keeping corporation tax low to attract investment into the United Kingdom. But I would look at the entire...
That's not worked. We've had decades of low corporation tax, and it's not attracted businesses back. What we need is high corporation tax to force people to reinvest. Rishi is correct about this issue.
Tax system, make it simpler and make it fairer for people who do the right thing.
Does this not underscore what some critics say, in that you're promising a lot of tax cuts? You're talking about looking at inheritance tax. You promised the good folk of Leeds a metro if you can get there earlier this evening. Some economists say your figures just don't add up. You haven't got enough money to bring in. How would you respond?
True. Yeah, technically, if you look back at all of the instances of dropping nuclear weapons, it has historically not gone very well. We don't have really good results on the externalities on dropping the most powerful weapon ever conceived by mankind.
Well, first of all of the tax reductions I promised are costed. We have £30 billion available headroom in the budget. We'll still be able to start paying down the debt in 3 years. But it's a false economy to raise taxes because it can cut off growth. And we know that.
No, that's just not true. That's just a straight up lie. Again, you have to be super fucking Rothbard brain to believe that.
We know what Britain was like in the 1970s when we had high tax rates, we had minimum militant trade unions. Is it choked off economic growth and it led to a recession. So I don't agree with those people who say you can just keep raising tax and the money will keep rolling in. What will happen is people won't want to go out to work. Companies won't want to invest in the United Kingdom. So we have to do things differently. We have to be bold. We've had slow economic growth for the last 2 decades. That's why
Yeah, they do that. They really do love the "would you be prepared to kill millions of people, Jeremy" question.
need to be different. But of course, I will be responsible, which is why I'm looking overall at the tax system.
Yeah, like if you have such a strong currency like the UK does, you can afford to just continue not having a national debt. It's fine. It's never really been a huge issue. The issue is when it became PFIs and it became the debt became kind of outsourced further than the remit, so it didn't really look like national debt when it was.
In the round, but I've made some immediate pledges that are fully costed. And what's more, they keep in turn with our manifesto commitment. I believe in doing what you say you will do. And I think it is wrong, and I raised this in Cabinet at the time, it's wrong to renege on a manifesto commitment when we had the money to afford that extra finance for the NHS
you
and
would
social
never
care.
renege on a manifesto commitment.
I would only do it, and let me be...
I mean, to be fair, if your opponent is Keir Starmer, this is the line you got to go with, reneging on commitments, right? Surely that's the right line to go with.
Being completely honest with you, Nick,
of course.
you know, if there was something that we absolutely had to do, for example, for national security reasons or for some massive priority, and there were some things we had to do as a result of the COVID crisis. Right. But in the case of the national insurance commitment, we didn't have to make that change, and we did, and that was wrong.
Okay. A handful of yes-no questions and a brief response, a brief reason, if you would. To those people who have complained, Love Island is misogynistic bullying and needs reining in, does it?
Well, all I can say is I watched it for 10 minutes.
Why the fuck did he... What sort of question is this? Why are you asking a question about Love Island? Of potential, I mean, the probable future Prime Minister. What the fuck is going on? What the fuck am I watching?
Minutes with my teenage daughter, and I was completely horrified, and I turned it off.
And was your daughter equally horrified?
Unfortunately not, and I'm quite worried. I'm quite worried she's gone off to watch it on her own, but she's actually in the audience, so I won't embarrass her anymore.
Okay, let's move on. You once told me some months ago that you thought any British football team should boycott the Champions League football final in Moscow. Noting the human rights abuses in Qatar, should England and Wales go to the World Cup later this year?
We should go to the World Cup. What we have seen in Russia invading a sovereign country was completely beyond the pale. Now,
as soon as the oil taps get turned off, that's the point of inflection, isn't it?
Every country in the world has exactly the same standards as the United Kingdom. And if we insisted that every country we did business with or we traded with or we attended a football match in had the same standards as the United Kingdom, we wouldn't be doing business with many.
Yeah, but it's fine to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia to do just as awful things to Yemeni people as Putin is doing in Ukraine, just on a larger scale. And we sell them the weapons that they do that with. And then we'd probably be happy to, you know, go to Saudi Arabia if they hold a World Cup, I'm sure.
Countries, frankly. So we've got to be practical, we've got to be pragmatic. But what Russia did to Ukraine was beyond the pale.
Okay. Last on the yes or no's and brief responses. Again, we all know it's a driver of crime and huge problems in inner cities and elsewhere. I have to ask you, have you ever used illegal drugs?
No, I haven't.
You become Prime Minister. There's another famous Elizabeth in the country. That would be the Queen. What would you say to her if, when you had your first audience, she reminded you that in 1994, as a Lib Dem, you voted for the abolition of the monarchy?
Well,
So, some people's opinions can get a lot worse.
I have to say, Nick, that I have met the Queen in the various roles that I've had, and she has been far too polite to raise what I have previously said.
What do you make of your views?
Almost as soon as I made the speech, I regretted it. I was a bit of a teenage controversialist, and just within these four walls.
It's not controversial to say that.
No one's listening.
Don't worry.
It's not controversial to say that having an unelected head of state from a hereditary family richer than fucking Croesus that we pay huge amounts of money to keep there for very little gain is a bad thing. That's not controversial.
I was briefly a member of the Liberal Democrats. I did leave it when I was 21, when I came of age and realised the error of their ways.
All right. Another question I've asked.
When you realise you can make much more money shilling for the even more corrupt party.
Who's the best leader of the Conservative Party of all time and why?
Mrs. Thatcher.
And why?
Because she turned our country around. You know, in the 1970s.
Yes, she did turn our country around, making it the worst country in Europe.
We were the sick man of Europe. We had low growth. We had massive industrial problems. I mean, I was born in 1975, so I was very young at the time. I didn't see it, but you know, you can watch the newsreels. You can see how appalling it was. And what I sensed in the 1980s is a growing sense of pride in our country and a growing sense of optimism about the future. And I think the pinnacle was when we saw the Berlin Wall fall, and we saw the freedom and democracy and the pride in our values influence.
Thatcher was against the fall of the Berlin Wall. She didn't want reunification between East and West Germany. But this is just complete historical revisionism.
The rest of the world, and she was a tremendous leader, a really world-changing leader, and I'm very, very proud that she was our Prime Minister.
Can I talk to you about the cost of living crisis? You'll be aware, but let me share with the audience here and the audience listening and watching, there have been some breathtaking figures for Shell profits. Quarterly profits, £9.5 billion. To put that in context, it was £4.5 billion last year, so it's more than double. Time for another windfall tax.
I don't believe in windfall taxes because they...
No, because these people, they're pulling up their bootstraps. Like, ripping off the poor is fine as long as the market demands that it's just. The market is the god. Who cares? They're just grey little savers doing what they want. Fuck the externalities, fuck the overall utility, and fuck the suffering that people have to endure with. Tough. That's what objectivists believe. They're looking out for number one. That's all that matters.
Put off future investment. What we should be doing is encouraging Shell and other companies to invest in the United Kingdom, because we need to get our productivity up. We need capital investment. What I would do is create low tax investment zones, encouraging those companies to invest in our country. I think windfall taxes send the wrong message to the world. They don't send the message that Britain is open for business. And actually,
you can take a letter out of windfall tax, and you have my solution to this issue.
What we need to be doing now is using more of our North Sea reserves to help people with the cost of living. And that's what I would do alongside having a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to really help people with their bills.
It's worth noting you worked for 4 years at Shell. What did you learn from your time there?
Of course she fucking did. Of course she fucking did. It's all mates.
I did 2 different jobs. I was in the petrol industry in Britain, so I'd spent a lot of time at refineries. And I also worked in the liquid natural gas industry, which is now very fashionable. I was in it when it wasn't fashionable and no one knew what it was. But what I learned was how important the security of our energy is, and how...
Yeah, so make us energy secure by creating a new green infrastructure that doesn't rely on foreign imports.
Shouldn't take it for granted. And I think that it's very important in the future that we never again become dependent on regimes that we can't trust. That is what's happened with Russia, less so for the UK than other European countries, but we need to learn that lesson for China as well. And we shouldn't be...
What do we rely on China for, other than cheap nonsense? Hey, thank you for the subscription, Blood Doll. Welcome to the No Justice stream. Hope you're doing well.
Whether it's critical minerals, whether it's oil and gas, we've got to be very careful because these are strategic industries, and we need to make sure that the UK has resilient supplies from countries that we can trust.
Last year, you voted to effectively rework parliamentary rules to support Owen Paterson. We know what that did for Boris Johnson's reputation. Why did you do that, and do you regret it?
I think we all know that it was a mistake. And we shouldn't, for me to vote that way, as well as the government, to make that decision. And no, I wouldn't do it again if I had my time again.
Yeah, because now it's not politically convenient for you to do so. It's never about principle. It's always about political convenience.
And what we know is there's a real need to improve discipline in the Conservative Party, but also to support the welfare of our MPs. It's a tough job being an MP. I know there's not a lot of tiny violins in this audience today, but they do get a lot of abuse. My colleagues get a lot of abuse on Twitter. They have to put up with quite a lot. So I want to support our MPs more, but also I want to make sure that when there is a problem, we deal with it early and we deal with it quickly. And one of the things I would do as Prime Minister is move the Whip's office back into number 12 Downing Street. They were moved out of number 12 Downing Street by Alistair Campbell and replaced by the press office, which shows the priorities of the Blair government. But we need to show that parliamentary democracy is what matters to us.
Well, it's so frustrating that how bad, the inner workings of the Blair government was. So literally every time you want to attack Labour, you can just attack how shit Blair and Brown were. And that's good enough, because they were technically the Labour Party, right? So it doesn't matter who's in charge. You can just attack Blair and Brown on their many, many faults.
And MPs are important, and we need that.
Yeah, the unwashed masses challenging MPs on the shit that they say, where previously they were in the privileged position of never actually being challenged before on social media. Woe is me. Woe is me, I am having my viewpoints contradicted.
Restoration of standards, discipline, but also support.
If you're able to, I'd love you to do 2 quick questions in the 1 minute I have left remaining. A lot of people suggest Ben Wallace could bring a lot of support to whoever candidate. What would you say to the Defence Secretary to support your campaign, Liz Truss?
Well, I've worked very closely with the Defence Secretary over the Russia-Ukraine crisis. You know, he is incredibly impressive. He has led not just the UK, but also the rest of the free world in making sure Ukraine has the weapons they need. And also, he's right about the defence budget.
But why
We do need to increase the defence budget. Okay. Well, look, I'm not going to tell Ben Wallace what to do, and believe me, he doesn't like being told what to do. So I think the best thing is to leave him to make his own decision. But, you know, I'm a huge fan of his. He's done a great job at defence.
Got to ask you, score prediction for Sunday's big game, England v Germany.
It's going to be 2-0 to England.
Love it.
And by the way, I'm planning to attend with the German Foreign Minister. So there'll be massive egg on my face if that doesn't come to fruition.
Okay. And when did you last go to a women's football game?
A few years ago. A few years ago, I went to Wembley.
Okay, all right.
Citation needed.
I hope you have a success. We'll all be pulling for you, I know, and the England team on that. Your appreciation before your questions. Liz Truss, please.
Thank you.
And we're going to take questions now. And now it is over to you, and there is a lady with a floral jacket. And your name, if you would, madam.
Rosemary.
Hello, Rosemary. Your question to Liz Truss.
I live in Seacroft, which is one of the poorest areas in
I know
Leeds.
it well.
How will your government put children at the heart of policy making to ensure, firstly, that they are given all the support they need to recover from the experiences of the last 2.5 years, and secondly, to ensure that the harms done to our children over the past 2.5 years are never, ever repeated?
Well,
when have the government, when have any, either Conservative or Labour at this point, when have they ever given a shit about young people at all?
First of all,
other than use them as the think of the children style thing to be fucking homophobic or transphobic.
You are right. We should not have closed our schools, and I think it has caused...
We absolutely should have closed the schools. Fucking hell.
A great deal of damage to children. And what we need to do is help children. So first of all, I would make sure we are supporting children in the early years, which are incredibly important. We need kids who get to school to be able to count, to be able to read, to be able to do all those basic things so they can...
Yeah, like they literally already do. When was the last time you had children who just didn't have proper reading and writing skills that they got from being in the state school system?
Benefit from a primary education. We need to focus more on getting English and maths standards up. It's still a case that 1/3 of our kids, when they leave primary school, do not have basic English and maths. And if you get to 11 without those basic skills, you are going to struggle later on in life to get a job. And look, I've got 2 daughters who were out of school during COVID. I know it was very, very tough for them.
Again, that's a really frustrating thing that I find from politicians on the right who only ever treat education. The only kind of lens you're ever allowed to view education through is how well it prepares you for work. It's never about, you know, how much better a member of society you can be, how much more profitable it is as a society in general from the kind of societal bonds that we share if we're more educated and we're more able to critically think about the kind of things that we do. But of course, they don't want critical thinkers who are there who have the thoughts available to challenge authority. They only actually really care about having compliant workers who are just smart enough to be able to operate the machinery, but too dumb to challenge the fact that the system is broken.
I know a lot of teenagers in particular are suffering from mental health issues. I'd want more mental health support available in schools, but also in GP surgeries to help children, and we need to put the extra effort in. I support the tutoring scheme. I think that was excellent. We need to do more of that. We need to make up for lost time with our children, because if we don't do that, we'll face real problems later on.
Thank you for your question. Ms. Truss, a lot of, yes, indeed, show your appreciation or otherwise, of course. A lot of experts say that schools were vectors of infection. Wasn't it necessary for the safety of the school staff, the teachers, the caretakers, and the pupils? You say no.
Yes.
Well, there was a time, I think I remember, during COVID when we kept the pubs open, but the schools were closed. And much as I love going to the pub, I probably
the pubs should have stayed closed too.
I think it is less necessary in a crisis
Okay.
than keeping schools closed. And there was a huge knock-on effect on the economy, on parents, and I think we could have done things differently. But look, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and the Prime Minister did his absolute best.
I just wanted to put the scientific question to you. Thank you for that response. Dark suit, sir, your name.
Good evening, everyone, and good evening, Liz. My name is Dieter.
Hello, Dieter.
Dieter, 2 questions, very small. One is the difference between North and South divide and leveling up. We know there have been cuts in HS2 rail links. What would you do if you become a...
No, that's the fucker I was talking about there. Like, the one who has got his head tilted, like, slightly to the left from our view. This guy is just, like, the most Tory... I mean, that whole front row, those three that you can see just to his left, the most Tories you've ever fucking seen. Like, the whole fucking front row. It's just, my God, could you, like, I could have put, like, Conservative voters into Dolly Mini and it would have produced these people. Like, an artificial intelligence would have been able to create these people from scratch as the Conservative voter base.
Prime Minister, to change the cuts which have been made, and some cities, including my city, has been treated unfairly.
Second you're question. In Leeds, I assume, sir, are you?
Bradford.
You're in Bradford, I'm sorry, yes, okay.
Bradford.
Can I just take one question? Would you be awfully offended, or did you have is another a long question that you have?
It's
sir?
regarding VAT for small businesses. The VAT threshold, which has remained £85,000 and has been fixed for next 2 years.
Okay.
Would you be able to change that, especially post-Brexit?
Okay.
Post-COVID, the small businesses have been suffering heavily.
I'm very grateful for the question. Can we start with levelling up the North, HS2, and the cities that have been left behind?
So
Ms. Truss.
what I would do for Bradford is proceed with the Northern Powerhouse Rail, which I think will make a massive difference. And as a teenager, I used to go to Bradford to visit the ice rink. I'm a keen ice skater, and the connection between Leeds and Bradford is not good enough, and the rest of the north of England. I've also said that West Yorkshire really suffers from not having better commuter transport. It is appalling that, I mean, and we've all been stuck in traffic jams today, frankly, and we know it's holding back opportunity and growth. And the other thing I want to do is level up in a Conservative way by having low tax zones to attract investment in areas that have been left behind. So we level the playing field, but we level the playing field through enterprise, through business, and more small business is absolutely crucial to that. On VAT...
No, you do it through public works programmes.
We need to review the overall system of business rates. We need to look at issues like VAT.
I know, right? It's so they just never ever get held to account. Everybody always plays softball with Tories, and it drives me up the fucking wall. We need fucking Paxman back.
Do it as an overall part of the tax review, but my reductions on national insurance would help small businesses as well.
Okay, just lastly, sorry, no applause come there, yes. On the weekend, your colleague Kit Malthouse described HS2 as a killer whale that could rip the arm off the next Prime Minister due to costs. How nervous are you about HS2? Or is Kit,
well, that sounds like a pitch. That sounds like a
pitch. Again?
That sounds like a pitch by Kit Malthouse for a job in a new government, doesn't it? That he would be the man who could, and he's a very effective minister, of course, in controlling costs. But I was not sure, frankly, of the case for HS2, but we are where we are. We've signed the contracts, we've spent the money, and now what we absolutely need to do is make sure we get...
Oh my God, yes, or on Reddit.
...value for money from it.
But
so he's right. He's right that we need to keep an eagle eye on costs. And just on these transport projects in general, they take far too much time to do. Why do they take so long? And, we have got a majority over...
What the fuck do you know about constructing public works projects, Liz? Well, they take too long. How do you know what the timescale should or shouldn't be?
70. I want to pass legislation to speed up these projects. We're no longer part of the EU. We should use those freedoms to do things differently and get things done faster.
How did the EU hold up HS2?
Well, I know, for example, that some of the procurement rules add extra time. There's lots of domestic problems as well. I don't deny that, Nick. But there's no reason why we shouldn't be one of the fastest countries in the world to get projects done, and we certainly aren't at the moment.
Okay, you don't need to get... I'm getting...
I'm glad you work on transport project. That's cool. They're doing far much more with your life than I am.
So that we can look after this side of the room. Gentleman in a check shirt. Sir, your name if you would.
Peter from Tadcaster. Good evening, Liz. I'd like to ask you a question in relation to energy supply. So this winter is going to be very, very challenging for the people of this country. Is it time that we re-looked at shale gas extraction?
So I support fracking in areas where people want it to happen. And I do think it can be part of the solution, as well as releasing more of the North Sea gas reserves. But more of the North Sea gas reserves will be quicker. We also need to do more nuclear power. And in particular...
No, we just need renewables. The time has come and gone for nuclear. We're not going to be able to get the nuclear power provision that we need to be able to meet green energy targets if we start now. We've started too late. The horse has bolted, so I'm sorry. It's going to have to be wind, it's going to have to be solar, it's going to have to be hydroelectric, it's going to have to be tide power, it's going to have to be biomass fuel, it's going to have to be all of these things, because these things can get started up pretty quickly. But to be able to get the nuclear infrastructure, like they have in somewhere like France or whatever, again, we've missed the window.
So we are now producing small modular reactors in Derbyshire. We should be having more of those in the UK, but also exporting them around the world. So it's a business opportunity for us as well. But I agree with you, it's going to be a tough winter, and we need to make sure we're doing all we can to lower bills and increase supply.
So you're in favour of shale. How would you determine if local people supported it?
Well,
You should only proceed if local people. Am I right?
Absolutely. And
so how would
you
we work out?
I also think that one of the ways that we gain local support is for people sharing the benefits of, for example, gas extraction
Would you
or
poll
other.
people? Would you send around asking them to vote? How would we
We've
know?
got these things called councils who
Yes,
can assess
indeed. You were
local
in the planning
opinion.
department, I think, once, yeah.
Well, I was on a planning committee of the council,
So it'd
which
be
is
left to
not
local
the best
authorities.
experience I've had in my life. But local authorities, local MPs, we gauge public opinion that way.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, don't need to move. Who are we with? Is it a young lady in a
Yeah, no direct democracy ever.
white jacket? Yes, please. I'll get out of your way.
Hello, Liz. Thank you for taking my question. It relates some way to schools and to our young people. During lockdown, when the schools were closed, many schools, without consultation with parents, took the opportunity to remove all the girls' toilets and make all of the toilets mixed toilets. Now, we have girls across this whole country who will not go to the toilet during break times. They go back to their lessons, they put their hands up to go to the toilets, and the teacher says you should have got in break time. Now, I want the government, you brought in a policy recently that said all new government buildings...
I think people keep saying that this happens. I guess maybe I don't have any friends who are parents. I don't have kids. I never go into schools. Obviously, why the fuck would I be in a school? What the fuck would I be doing in a school? I've never heard of these schools that are full of nothing but unisex toilets. Like, I've never heard of this shit. Is it a big problem? Like, as far as I'm concerned, the solution that you do want, the two solutions that you want is have 3 sets of toilets, 1 unisex, and then 2 sex segregated ones as well. And the second solution is you just have it all unisex, you never have congregatory areas, you just have individual toilets with individual sinks, walled, with no fucking space up the top for the doors, fuck that shit, and you just go in, you do your business, you wash your hands, and then the door goes back into the main area. Rather than, like, these, why do toilets have to be a congregation? I just do not get it. I just don't get it. Just have single occupancy stalls for loos, make them all gender neutral, and then there's all this mixing stuff. It doesn't need to happen anymore.
Would have separate toilets for men and women. I want you to bring in a policy that guarantees that our daughters can go to a toilet in a safe environment in any school in this country.
So, I completely agree with you. I have sought to clarify that as Women's Minister. I've been very clear that single-sex spaces should be protected, particularly for young people.
It wasn't about protecting single-sex spaces. It was about making sure that single-sex spaces were delineated. Again, she's dog whistling to TERFs. That's what she's doing.
As well as vulnerable people vulnerable women in domestic violence shelters.
That's not about. She didn't ask about fucking domestic violence shelters. Stop using this completely unrelated question to start attacking the needs of trans people to have access to inclusive spaces. Fuck off, Liz. Oh god, just these people make me so angry.
For example, and I can assure you, as Prime Minister, I would direct that to happen because our girls need. It's a difficult time being a teenager, being a young girl, and you should be able to have the privacy you need in your own loo. So I 100% agree with you, and I would make that happen.
Okay, and a lot of support. But what of a pupil who is transitioning? Where does she go to the toilet?
Well, they go to the toilet that matches their gender identity. There you go, simple as that. They have single occupancy toilets at the beach, yeah, exactly. Fucking Portland is the single occupancy toilets, right? We don't have men's and women's loos at fucking festivals, do we? But what about a child who's transitioning? They use the toilet of the gender that they identify with. Very, very simple. Not a difficult question to answer, although I'm sure she'll try and garble out some transphobic nonsense.
First of all,
I asked, do we have boys, girls, and another?
First of all,
no. If you're a trans girl, use the girls' loos. Simple.
Not believe that under 18s should be able to make irreversible decisions about their own bodies. That they might.
That's not the question that he asked. Like, yeah, JDM, you got there first. You beat me to it. Like, what the fuck is she talking about? First of all, the NHS guidelines explicitly state that you can't get transition therapy if you're under 18. You have to be over the age of 18 to have any of these fucking irreversible changes that she's talking about. The only thing that you can get is puberty blockers to make sure that once you do get to that age, you can have you have that time to choose before your natural puberty changes things that are going to be irreversible moving forward, right? Should you continue to remain to be trans, right? Yeah, exactly. It's just dog whistling. It's just turf dog whistling. This really is. The media have been incredibly smart in the way that they've done this to try and, because they've always asked the what's a woman question to use transphobia as this kind of culture war issue. And you've seen the hashtag Labour losing women on Twitter and stuff like that, right? They're explicitly doing it because they're trying to make sure that they can use the single issue, the moral panic over trans people, to try and move people from Labour over to the Conservative Party purely on this one single issue about shitting on a very, very tiny minority, which is trans people. The thing is, it's not just clowns who vote for her already. It's trying to pull across people from other sectors. Like, all of these fucking second wave feminist type TERF types who really are quite well off now, the kind of middle class J.K. Rowling fans who had champagne breakfasts wearing J.K. Rowling masks and who started boycotting Waitrose because of Kelly J. Keane Minshall, right? These people have previously voted around the political spectrum because they're fucking middle class shit lib types. But they're going to get pulled into voting Conservative because they've taken a moral stance on this wedge issue.
They might come to regret later. So I think it's very important to note that. And of course, schools
that literally does not happen.
Be sensitive. They can provide additional facilities, but it should not be the
No, but trans girls use the girls' loo. It's simple.
Expense of protecting young girls.
All right, thank you for that.
And which trans girls are, and we should protect them. Although it's interesting that she tried to kind of skirt around it with her answer. She didn't explicitly say anything about what the kids who are socially transitioning should or shouldn't do. She didn't make any prescriptions about that. So it's clear she's trying to skirt around the issue, which is, I guess, better than her just being outright transphobic rather than just dog whistling it.
We haven't done enough this. Sorry to spin you round. Sir, you didn't ask before, did you? No. I just need to double check. You're in a blue suit, a blue suit and a blue shirt, appropriately enough. Your question. Your name first, sir.
My name's Marcus.
Hello, Marcus.
I'm here from Nottingham tonight.
God, he's from my town! No, no, I'm gonna find him. If I meet him in town, I'm gonna fucking not do anything because I have no, I do not have any kind of gumption or anything like that. But I'm gonna pretend that if I saw this person in Nottingham, I tell them they were a Tory twat. I'm gonna pretend that's something that I do.
Sorry about all the Yorkshire mentions.
That's
Apologies.
okay. That's okay.
Hope I haven't lost your vote.
You haven't. I'm here representing Nottingham because we haven't got a hustings in Nottingham, but I'm not bitter about that. The reason I'm here was because I was inspired by a lady who was on TV when I was 14. Of course, it was Margaret Thatcher. I grew up in a council estate, so I've been.
How can you grow up on a council estate and end up supporting Margaret Thatcher? What the fuck are you doing? Oh God, working class Tories are just the worst people. I hate them so much. That's not fun. That's a lie. I hate literally every other Tory more than them. But working class Tories do really get my goat.
Been inspired by the Conservative beliefs. Now living in Nottingham, and when you look at inner cities and the issues that we have in inner cities, council estates, and especially councils who use money almost to bankruptcy, what policies are you going to bring in to deal with those type of councils?
Thanks, Marcus. Liz Truss.
Well, I too grew up in Leeds, and we've had a Labour council in Leeds since the dawn of time, and they were utterly hopeless. And too often in schools, and there were some good teachers in my schools, there were some not so good teachers, but too often the edicts.
Oh, that's true. That's true. If you became one of the fucking the free landlords out of Right to Buy, who just got gifted by like the Tory sell-off. I mean, I guess that's true. Like, plenty of people of his age and from his era, they got gifted huge amounts of money from the sell-off of all of the public sector that happened during the 80s. So much so that they essentially got given a social mobility now at the expense of our social mobility then. Sorry, at the expense of our social mobility now. Of course, you'd feel like you were pretty well done by that. That makes sense, actually, Shade. Yeah.
That came from the city council were all about political correctness rather than about getting on with teaching.
Oh, fuck off. Oh, God. It's like being back in 2012 again. It's literally, we're back in fucking Stuart Lee's political correctness sketch. We can't have hot liquids by the workstation. It's political correctness gone mad.
English and maths and giving the kids the opportunities they need in life. So I completely agree.
The teachers, they still do that. They still teach them that stuff.
I agree with you. What we have to do is make sure.
Child Logic with the raid of 302. Welcome, raiders. Welcome. How are we doing? Hope we are doing well. We're covering some UK Britpol because that's what I do with my life. Just cover British politics over and over and over again. But Please, if you've just joined in, my name is No Justice MTG. I cover a lot of British politics. Most days of the week now. I've had a week off, so I've had lots of time with which to do it. If you want to see more content, please drop a follow. Please click on my name or my picture so that you're watching through my link and not through the host from Chud Logic. Thank you, all three of you. Thank you for all of the follows so far. Welcome to the No Justice stream. Hope we're all doing well. We're currently watching the Tory leadership contest hustings between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. There's only about 20 minutes left of it. There should be some time. We should be able to get some juicy morsels out of it. Hope the rest of the Chud drama stream went pretty well. Please do drop the Chud Logic jam emote. Please go for it. Thank you again for the follow. Welcome to the Justice stream. Hope we're doing well.
That these Labour councils, these Labour mayors, are held to account, and they're able to.
Actually, I'm sure plenty of people from Chud's chat know who I am from when I've been a caller on Chud stream, but then it's a digression.
So I agree with empowering local authorities more. They need to be raising the money they spend so that voters understand that when they're not delivering, they should be kicked out.
All right. I'm not familiar with Leeds, although my current partner is.
It's a gap. It's a gap in your education.
My current, and you'll, I'm sure, help me. My current partner is, and she danced regularly at Mr. Craig's, which was the nightclub. There we are. So that has to be local. So she was right. You've been disobliging about the school you went to in Leeds, haven't you? You've made it sound like it was some backwards, what does they say, gutter comprehensive that Alistair Campbell once called them. It's nothing like it. It's a lovely, it's a lovely part of town. Houses start at £1 million, and everybody wants to live there. Why were you so rude?
So, I didn't say that my school was. I didn't. I think you said bog standard.
I saw on Twitter someone who said that they went to the same school who was in the year below as her. Literally said that they thought the school was really, really good in Leeds, run by in the kind of the Labour council area that they grew up in. Got to imagine that she's literally just saying it because she's trying to kind of create some kind of narrative about how they're going to change schooling and how it's all gone woke and politically correct, etc.
We're there now. But I'm not.
Well, because there's a big conversation about bringing back the grammar school system. So
I'm not claiming it was a sink school. It was an average comprehensive at the time, and what I'm saying is that average comprehensive, under the auspices of Leeds City Council, there were too many kids who were able to leave school without the education that they needed. The teaching was patchy. We didn't have league tables at the time. We didn't have a national curriculum. So there were kids who fell
the national curriculum that was introduced by Tony Blair
through the cracks, and also
not rough
in
town,
Leeds.
is it?
Well, it's a very mixed intake at Roundhay School, and it's a good group of pupils. And what I found, by the way, is when I left that school and went to Oxford University, there were pretty talented people at Roundhay School who should have been at Oxford University rather than some of the people that were actually there. But what I felt was there were low expectations.
So we have a choice of someone who went to Oxford or someone who went to Oxford. We've got a really kind of broad, diverse set of class interests at power here.
Of some of the pupils in the school, and sometimes those low expectations were actually about where those kids had come from in Leeds.
Okay.
So there were different expectations from kids from the middle class areas than there were from the council estates, and I thought that was wrong.
Okay.
And I still think it's wrong. And what I don't want is kids growing up around this country who have the teachers or the schools or the council have low expectations from them because of their background.
Thank you, Liz Truss, and a lot of support for your view. Gentleman in a blue shirt, directly ahead of me. Sorry, I was told you had the mic. Will you go second? You'll go second because it's a man in a white shirt, I think, sir. No, yes.
Hello, I'm Graham from York.
Hello, Graham.
You talk a lot about growth. In fact, you both do, which is obviously good. I know a lot of small businesses in and around York who would dearly love to grow. The business is out there, but they simply cannot get the staff. What would you do about that?
Well, you're right.
To be fair, we have a really tight labour market. There's very few people. There's plenty of job opportunities, but there's very few people actually looking for work right now, and that should be driving up the price of labour. But it's not doing so for some reason. I guess there's not really much kind of union strength at the moment. Hopefully that's going to change moving forward.
After COVID, after furlough, it has been difficult getting staff across the country. One thing I would do...
Hey, Captain SpacePig23, thank you very much for the subscription. I always appreciate the support. Welcome to No Justice stream. Hope you're doing well.
...is tighten up our incentives in our welfare system to encourage more people to go into work. We've still got a lot of economically inactive people.
If anyone else feels like dropping a subscription or some bits, it was my birthday yesterday. I will treat it as a birthday present. I'm no stranger to shilling myself. If you want to go and drop us up, please feel free. It's never expected, but always appreciated.
Who are not taking the opportunities of work. And It's about
No, we really don't. We have the lowest unemployment levels since Jim Callahan. Like, this is the lowest level unemployment levels in like 50 years, right? Almost, actually, no, 45 years or so, right? That means that there aren't loads of people freeloading or loads of people looking for work. That's just not the case. What there is too much of is people who are in work that is like in the gig economy, that is perilous in the kind of state that they're in. It's not secure work, and so much so that a large portion of people who are on universal credit are people who are already in work. They don't get paid enough from their actual job. They have to get paid additional. The wages are supplemented by the government. So this should be coming out of the actual company itself, but we're having to subsidize it through the states, through the exchequer. This is bad. This is bad for everybody.
It's about making sure those job opportunities are
Yes, all Britpol streamer, Britpol all day, every day. Not really every day, but I basically only ever really talk about Britpol on here.
there. But we need to do that because otherwise the people who are working are bearing the burden of paying the cost. And of course, there are some people who can't work, but there's an awful lot of people who we can encourage to get into work. And I work very closely with Therese Coffey. I know she's looking.
And as I said previously, like the whole thing about the switch from Callahan to Thatcher was Thatcher's explicit policy at managed unemployment to try and drive down inflation. And considering that they're trying to get even less unemployment now, we're trying to get us even closer to like full employment in a time of like very, very high inflation. It seems like bad economics to me.
Looking at this issue, but that is what we need to do. We need to train up more people in the types of skills that we need, and we need to make sure the incentives are there to get people into work.
What impact, if any, has Brexit had on the labour market?
Well, these problems that the gentleman has just been talking about, they're global problems. They've got the same problems in the United States, in Canada, and across the world, because we are all suffering from the global economic shock caused by COVID.
Would not some of the farmers you referenced earlier say they miss some European workers? You mentioned in your earlier speech, Liz Truss, are they not missing
in Europe, they are also struggling to get workers on their farms as well. What we have is the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Scheme. I support that. I think we do need to make sure there are available people to work on our farms. I talked earlier about my passion for British food. I think it is important that we open up those schemes on a temporary basis, on a seasonal basis, to bring those people into the country. But this is not a problem that's unique to Britain. It's a problem across Europe. It's a problem in Canada, America, and around the world.
All right, last 2-3 minutes. So, white polo shirt, sir.
Thanks for the follow, Amaranth. Not the Amaranth, obviously, but thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the No Justice stream, as always.
Your question to Liz Truss. I'll get out of your way, Mr. Truss.
Hi, so Alex, living in Leeds from Birmingham. Quick question about child benefit. So at the moment, it currently tapers off when one earner in the house earns above 50k. There's quite a big range of combinations of earners within a household, especially with people that earn 50k that do or don't have student loans as well, which makes up quite a big difference.
Fuck, I'm so hard done by because I earn 50k and I might lose my child benefit. I can't believe anybody who earns 50k. I promise you, you are not hard done by. You earn almost double the median wage. Absolutely fuck off. We do not need the state to supplement your childcare when you earn £50,000 a year. Jesus fucking Christ. Unless you live in London, maybe your housing costs are so high that 50k isn't enough for all of your childcare costs at the same time, but even so.
Difference, and especially when one of the earners goes on maternity leave and can...
Captain Space Pig, the best... other British political streamers are Lonabox and Kevin Logan. As for YouTube channels that deal with British politics, you want Novara Media. They're the best place to go.
Have quite a big impact on the household income. Is that something that you'll look into if you were leader?
As I mentioned earlier, I want to review the tax system to make sure it's fair for families. Because at the moment, if you take time off work to look after a child or to look after an elderly...
I'm assuming what they really want to do is they want to kind of incentivize people to get into families so that they're able to use that to try and get people to have more babies, right? Apparently, there's a real problem with the UK's birth rate right now, so by trying to subsidize people from getting into kind of family arrangements and using that as some kind of cultural kind of mast that they can stick down, they can use that to try and incentivize people to have more kids at the end of the day, because we're going to lose so much because of the loss of immigration due to things like Brexit and their tougher stance on immigration as well, to try and get the native birth rate up because they're worried about demographics, possibly. that, and it's also just a convenient kind of cultural talking point so that you can avoid talking about everybody's low wages. Is it really shade? Fucking hell! Again, I have no, I don't raise kids. I'm never having kids, so I can't really comment on the kind of minutiae of these businesses. Another person who does good British political content on Twitch is Queen Janie. I recommend her as well. She's liberal rather than a leftist, but she covers plenty of current events, and I think she's really fair in her analysis. So,
relative, you are relatively penalised in the tax system. So I want to look at that, and we need to make sure the tax system works with things like child benefit, so it's fair. But overall, I think we just need to simplify the system because it's so complicated for people to understand. It's so complicated for the government to administer, and sometimes the government loves complexity.
Is it really or have we not just been dealing with it absolutely fine for ages? I'm not sure what's so complex about it that it means that it can't be handled by people who are either using it or by the government that's distributing it.
I talked about the Treasury earlier, but they
By
love
complicated, she means we're spending too much money.
these complex schemes, these combinations of benefits, and often it's just very, very hard for people to work out exactly how it will affect them. And I want to reward people who do the right thing, who look after their families, who go out to work, who start a business, and we need our tax system to reflect that.
All right, if we sprint, we can get through two more. Sorry to pause again, though. Yes, indeed. Blue shirt, sir.
Hi, Liz. It's Adrian from Very Conservatives, a member of Very Conservatives. And the first question...
Do you remember me? What comedian does he sound like? I sound like Bruce Forsyth. Fucking hell. Like a younger Bruce Forsyth. We simplify it by cutting it. Yeah, absolutely, Dangrel.
Well, you only have one, sir. I'm sorry, sir. If you could get your...
Would you have Jeremy Hunt? Would you have Jeremy Hunt in your cabinet?
Would you have...
I thought about to say Jeremy Corbyn in the cabinet there. Very, very strange man. It's me, Lucas.
Jeremy Hunt, I think certainly wouldn't have Jeremy Corbyn. That'd be a hell of a story.
And do you think...
Might lock him in the wardrobe, but not in the cabinet. I've got to limit that to you. I'm so sorry, sir. Jeremy Hunt, final question.
I am not.
Oh, God. Yeah, come on. Come on, Nick. You're a broadcaster. You're a journalist. You know better than to call him by his not real name, Jeremy Hunt. You know what his real name is. Call him by his proper name. Come on. You're a broadcaster. You should know what his name is.
Thinking at this stage about cabinet jobs, but what I can reassure you is I will make sure all of the talent of the Conservative Party, whichever part of the Conservative Party they're from, are on the front bench. And it will be on the basis of can they deliver? Are they going to be the people to get the waiting list down in the NHS? Are they going to be the people who are going to stand up to Russia? Are they the people who are going to shake up the Treasury and deliver the investment we need across our country and cut taxes? That is what I will base my decision on about who is in the cabinet.
And the final question, we're going to swing round to here. I think it's a young man. Sir, would you stand up and give us your first name, sir?
I'm Patrick.
Hello, Patrick.
Hello. We've spoken a lot about tonight about working people subsidising those who don't work. Well, in this country, we have a massive amount of people who don't work, pensioners who have their triple lock subsidised by people who do work. And when increasingly young people can't afford to get by a house.
We have a fucking rubbish state pension. Like, for a very long time, I was against the triple lock. I felt like for too long, basically every single government that we've had has explicitly tried to pander to pensioners and pander to boomers as a kind of voter demographic. But then I looked at how our state pension compares to like the rest of Europe and other places, or like superannuation that you get over in Australia, and I realised that we're just rubbish. Like but we spend so much of our budget on pensions as well. It's an absolute fucking mess. It's almost like moving from our defined benefit pensions from the private sector towards defined contribution schemes has really screwed things up. Like I was reading, there's a video I did on my channel. Thank you for the follow, Pedro from Cozy TV. There was a video I did on my channel previously, a segment I did about some guy who had like a £6,000 a month private sector pension. £6,000 including his private sector pension, his state pension, and money that he got from investment as well, because he was a landlord. I was like, he gets so much money from this private pension, and for me to be able to retire with that same private pension that he got from working when he started working 40 years ago or whatever, I'd have to retire at 88. Right, that's how different the pensions are between then and now. So the idea that we should get rid of the triple lock, I think it would be really kind of electorally unviable for the Tories right now to do it, considering the even now everybody like the Tories kind of the public perception of the Conservatives is so low, they might even start losing boomer votes to Labour, which is absolutely unconscionable if you think of it from a kind of electoral demographic reasons. So I think they wouldn't end the triple lock, even though I think they probably want to.
Rent's going incredibly high.
Because usually they could get away. They could usually get away with something that negatively impacted pensioners. But as soon as the Conservative Party start looking weak, they start, absolutely hemorrhaging votes because of it. Look at the dementia tax in the 2017 election, right? That was a really poor policy prescription, but lost them a bunch of their core voter base whilst they were looking weak. If they were a really strong party, if they had, huge support in the polls, they could probably change their tactic around a triple lock on pensions. But now I don't think they can afford to do so.
National insurance hiked, so it's becoming increasingly hard to work. But people who own their houses, paid off their mortgages, and have a lot of money in wealth and equity, aren't paying.
Why are you a Tory, you little shit? Like, and if you know full well that the reason why we're in this mess with regards to how much people pay in rent, the national insurance rise, how much money has been kind of siphoned up and been kind of accumulated in assets amongst one generation of older people, right, of pensioners. That is explicitly down to the Conservative Party. Why are you a member of this party? They've literally done this, not just done this because of as an externality. They've explicitly tried to create this situation. It's been engineered by the Tories to solidify their voter base amongst people who own a bunch of property equity. I can't. Why are you a member of this party who've made your life worse for the reasons that you have completely identified in this little rant that you've done?
Whilst working people and young people pay for them to sit at home and watch daytime TV.
Well, not a universally popular view, Liz Truss.
Well, first of all...
Well, yeah, exactly, quite.
Can I say, this is one of the many reasons that we need to reverse the national insurance increase, because we shouldn't be penalising families and working people. And, older people have a huge contribution to make to our society. What I think is that we should be helping older
the
people.
contribution they make to society is being your voter base, providing you with the votes that you need to be in power every single time there's a general election.
People work if they want to work. And I think we could do things like more part-time jobs. So in other countries, people tend to gradually wind down into retirement. In Britain, there sort of is a cut-off. And I think people who are older in the population have a great deal to contribute.
Literally, let's work old people to death. Oh, this is a great policy, isn't it, Liz? Let's fucking go. We're really going to alienate your voter base with that one. But unfortunately, she can't put, again, the actual point that he'd raised about kind of the accumulation of property asset wealth amongst the boomer generation. She can never, ever, ever, ever challenge the orthodoxy of the Thatcher years and the orthodoxy of the kind of neoliberal hegemony over this particular issue. She can't come back and say, yeah, no, we need to have a look at the way in which we can make sure that housing prices go lower so my voter base lose a bunch of property equity, because they gain far more, right? Especially if they're the Conservative members, right? Not just Conservative voters, but Conservative members. They gain far more by continually raking in money from property equity, whether they be landlords or property developers or just somebody who plans to sell their house to pay for their own social care. That is far more lucrative for them than anything they get from the state pension. They would have all of the locks on the state pension removed before they would ever, ever, ever support any policy that might reduce the price of their house. 48 years of contribution just for Liz to tell you to get a part-time job. Yeah, exactly.
So what I would like to do is see what financial encouragement we can give to get more people working part-time and to help in the economy. And just on the subject of houses,
what would they do?
Can I just say...
Have I got to go and work at B&Q now when I'm 70?
How old are you now?
I'm in my early 60s, Miss Truss.
Well, you've got another... take Nick Ferrari, he's got another 30 years on the clock. Don't you think? Don't you think?
You can immediately see that everyone's just like, what the fuck is she saying? This is the weirdest moment of the hustings so far. And we've left it right for the end. We've ended on a banger. Let's fucking go. Make the old people work longer. Do more work, oldies. Come on, chop, chop. I know that's how this the reserve army of Labour all over again, right? Otherwise known in the industry as doing a Macron.
How would you financially incentivise them to go and work at home base?
You know, there are things we could do. I'm not talking about working at home base. I think people have huge. By the way, I don't denigrate working at home base either. But there are lots of roles that people can take up. And what I think is people have a huge contribution to make to our society. People are living longer. And one of the great things that we did under the David Cameron government is remove compulsory retirement, so people are able to choose, and I think that's really important. But on house building, the problem is we've had these top-down targets, which are decided...
The Stalinist targets, as she put it in an article that she did previously. She called house building targets Stalinist. I shit you not.
In Whitehall, what I want to see is much more bottom-up, locally driven housing to make sure we do have the houses so that young people can get on the housing
And are
ladder.
too many people sitting on their backsides watching Love Island, as the colleague suggested there? Yes or no?
No.
No. Whoa. He said daytime TV, not evening TV.
The answer.
All
And
right.
I think people work incredibly hard, and you know the people in this room are people who have given up their Thursday night to listen to you and me, Nick, and Rishi, and Rishi, and you know work incredibly hard for the Conservative Party.
She's not made any actual prescriptions about what she would do about house building. She's like, oh, I need some bottom-up targets. But what the fuck does that mean? Tell us that you need to change planning regulations. Tell us that you need to build more social housing, which of course she's never going to do because that completely conflicts with her objectivist political philosophy, right? We need more social housing. As I've said in a TikTok that I did earlier today, actually. You know, in the period up until 1975, we were building hundreds of thousands of council houses a year. How many are we building? Literally like hundreds of times less than that nowadays. It's absolutely fallen off a cliff, and that's what's caused so much of the property asset wealth be conglomerated into one single generation and kind of consumed by the boomers post right to buy, right? And so and because the private sector, the people who own all of these houses now, it's only 2011, mind you, the people in private rents outstrip people in social rents. There is no incentive for them to engage in enough development that it would drive prices down. What we actually need to do is just build absolute shit ton of social housing to provide people to be able to drive rents down as well. Not just drive house prices down, but drive rents down. That's the really big issue, is that rents are, you know, going up sometimes, you know, 5, 10, 15% right now. And that's included in the fact that people's energy bills are jumping by £2,000 a year or whatever it is by January next year. And so people keep talking about energy bills. When are we going to start? We're going to start talking about fucking landlords. When are we going to start getting on their game?
And we have a great voluntary party. We have fantastic people that work for charities. But what we need to do is encourage that and get off people's backs so they can spend more time doing things that contribute.
Let me get off my backside and ask you all to
Oh God, she's really answered that question hilariously badly.
appreciation for Liz Truss, if you would.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
See you
Great
again.
to see you.
Thank you very much indeed. Liz,
I hope you've got another 30 years on the clock.
of course I have. If you demand it, it will happen.
Yes.
Liz Truss, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
No comment. £800 for a 2-bed flat? What the fucking hell? Yeah, the mortgage obviously is always going to be cheaper, but I mean, that's true. I mean, like, essentially what's happened a lot of the time in London is that so much of the property in London, it's not Chinese, it's usually actually Russian oligarchs and investment, and just in general, regardless whether it's foreign or domestic, too much of the property in this country is being monopolized and bought up by private equity firms who are using it as a speculative investment rather than, you know, a place to live. And because people, and there's like TSB buying up entire like rows and hamlets full of houses so that they can gain a monopoly on the market and drive prices and rents up even further. Like Lloyd's TSB engaging in it, just like BlackRock are engaging in a similar thing over in the United States, because the supply of it is so inelastic, but mostly due to planning regulations, but also just to do with timescale, right? It takes a long time to build new houses, whether or not you have the planning permission or not. So the supply being so elastic to deal with the ever-increasing demand means that once you have that monopoly, it's really easy to maintain the prices on these things. And then, yeah, using it as a speculative investment over time, because they know the more people that they can extricate from owning their own house increases the further demand for rental accommodation, thereby increasing competition, driving up rents overall, which drives up house prices, puts more people into the rental sector, and it's this kind of a self-perpetuating cycle. It's really bad. Is there anything left of this particular video?
All that remains. Thank you very much again. I apologise. I know so many more of you wanted. I'm very sorry. I did as best as I can on behalf of Peter Booth, on behalf of Andrew Stevenson, and I know on behalf of the two candidates. Thank you, as we just heard, for giving up your Thursday evening. Please.
Another issue with landlordism is that interest rates have been historically low for far too long, and investors have been kind of drunk, really, on low interest rates to be able to incredibly cheap buy-to-let mortgages once they have the ability to get enough investment for the down payment. It's incredibly cheap credit, unfortunately, on an incredibly necessary resource that poor people are now having leased back to them at extortionate prices.
Make your way home safely.
And because it's necessary for everybody who's got their money invested into that system to continue driving prices up, to continue making sure that that asset continues to accrue value. It means that more and more people from the working classes or whatever find it even harder to get onto the property ladder, as the kid in the audience was saying.
And thank you for being such a super audience. Thank you very much indeed.
And that is the end. That is the end. Well, that was an absolute shambles, but Rishi definitely looks better on essentially every single issue than Liz Truss. Liz Truss, we found out she wants to make old people work. She wants to go into toilets and make sure that she knows who should be using it and who shouldn't. Yeah, they are incredibly fucking old. There's Tory membership in it. Of course it's going to be old. We also learned that Liz Truss wants to start nuclear war. So she looked pretty bad, whereas Rishi was... And she also wants to make inflation worse by making sure that unemployment goes even lower, and she's going to cut a bunch of taxes as well. So Liz Truss is going to destroy the country. That's what we found out. And Rishi Sunak wants to do mostly bad things, but also wants to continue with his rise in corporation tax, which would be a good thing, which would be the singular good policy that he has. So I have very little confidence in what's going to happen in the future for this country, because they're almost certainly going to elect Liz Truss. She only ever has to appeal to the Conservative membership. So we're at the behest of them, unfortunately. What time are you on? 10:30. Probably not going to get around to that Xexizy video, as much as Xexizy was in my chat earlier. Probably not going to get round to watching the Xexizy video because it's quite late. What I did want to go over was the kind of a union news roundup from what we've seen this week. Obviously, we've been all kind of consumed by what's happening with the RMT. Nick Lynch, Eddie Dempsey have been on TV a lot. You've seen them articulate incredibly well the need for strike action, the need for industrial action, the need for people to use the power of withdrawing their labour to be able to gain some concessions during a cost of living crisis. They've done a really good job of explaining this on camera because they've been invited on TV quite a lot. But these are not the only union it's not the only union action that you might have actually heard of, because there's plenty going on, including my union, the CWU. They're right up there, and what they've done is they've got us the first UK call centre strike in history, which is pretty fucking based. BT workers are fighting the rigged economy. Today's BT Openreach strike is the first national telecom strike in decades and the first national call centre strike in Britain's history. I wish my call centre would do this. Hope you're not watching, manager. I have fingers crossed. It pits 40,000 underpaid workers against one of the most profitable corporations in this country. And if you look here as well, was it this one? I've lost the tweet now. But essentially, the BT Openreach have made huge killings in profit, whilst these people have not seen decent pay rises. They even had inside the BT call centres, they had food banks for the people who work there, which sounds pretty fucking dystopian if you have to rely on a food bank from your own workplace, but that's a bit of a digression. Morning this week, CW member Pete Francis had a phone call from ex-colleague at BT. The team member on the other end told Pete he had his access revoked to work areas in the BT tower where he also works. Pete thought it might just be a rumour, but when he tried to go in later that day, he found that a team member was right. His access no longer worked. The same thing had happened, he quickly discovered, to another colleague from the same branch. 4 days later, there's still no explanation. No official word from the company at all, in fact, no access. I find it quite deplorable that management have spread it around to other team members to say that, even though it's my workplace, he tells Tribune, gesturing up at the iconic tower he's currently picketing, and it's strange that happened on Monday, just a few days before the industrial action started. Pete has worked with BT for 37 years. and explains that these tactics aren't out of step with the broader approach of management towards workers and the union representatives. And there's a culture, he says, of people being singled out here, adding that it's not a nice place to be when that happens. Workers are worried if they're seen at the picket, for example, they'll be picked on, which again, classic union busting tactics. Anyone who's followed a lot of American politics, we all saw the union busting that Amazon engaged in to try and stop people voting to unionize in Arizona, was it? Was it Arizona, I think the strike was, if I remember all the way back then. But yeah, no shock to see that plenty of people in the private sector are engaging in as much union busting as they possibly can. It's far more likely to happen in the private sector. Intimidation like that makes the CW's achievement in organising BT workers this year only more impressive. More than 90% of OpenReach engineer and BT call centre members voted for industrial action in June, and 40,000 are striking today, with a 24-hour walkout planned for Monday. Pretty good. What's more, General Secretary Dave Ward points out that most of the workers now on strike are not based in big workplaces, but isolated, working either from home or in vans. So to get a result like that, Dave explains, standing on the pavement across the road from picket line, tells me that there's no worker in the UK that's unreachable, which is true. Like, I work from home now. I just need to be able to find a way of being able to... I'm in a kind of pseudo-management role now. I need to be able to get the word out to people that I work with to join the CWU without alerting my superiors to it. Ooh, fingers crossed. Working or striking against a pay rise imposed by BT, not negotiated, Dave emphasises, of just £1,500, equivalent to about 4.8% for an average worker, against inflation expected to top 11%. BT CEO Philip Janssen, meanwhile, increased his earnings last year by 32%, while call centres reported to be opening up in workplace food banks, justified by BT as a community pantry for staff members to use. Maybe, if you need a community pantry for your own staff members, maybe you're not paying them enough. Maybe you need to pay them more fucking money. Give us the money. Despite that, Dave says of Janssen, the guy's got the arrogance to sit in his office and refuse to get his hands dirty, and refuse to even negotiate at all. It's unacceptable. The attitude of management has predictably created an atmosphere among workers in which morale towards BT and OpenReach is the lowest it's ever been, according to Pete. I've seen some low ebbs, but we haven't been on strike for 35 years, and that sums up where we are. I mean, if it's taken you 35 years to get to strike action, that must say something. We've never had to resort to this, and we've always been able to negotiate and come to a solution. This is a company that made $1.3 billion in profit last year, and they've just posted that in the first quarter of this year, another £400 million. They've gave £750 million to the shareholders. They can afford a proper pay rise. There's not a dispute about affordability. It's a dispute about people like Janssen and their boards ripping off workers and also ripping off customers. For Dave, this is a key point. Alongside its quarterly profits, BT also announced plans this week to hike broadband costs for customers by 13% from January, joining other costs like food and fuel in an unrelenting upward spiral. Energy bills alone now predicted to reach £3,500 by the end of 2022, whilst energy companies will post record profits, a figure Pete points out that simply isn't viable for workers, like those he represents, sometimes earning around £20,000 a year, which is similar to what I earn. Anger for rising prices and falling wages brings together both workers and customers and goes far beyond BT. Because again, these people are not striking just for themselves. And as Mick Lynch said on TV, obviously, I was Eddie Dempsey actually, RMT may have been the first out of the blocks, but it's high time that everyone else realised that the power of collective bargaining is what's going to be able to pull people through the cost of living crisis by increasing people's remuneration through the pay packet rather than relying on the government to maybe implement a windfall tax and to dole out some money when they feel like it. Whereas if we actually do it through a pay packet, it's certainly going to be able to beat inflation at least somewhat. When it comes to shifting public opinion, Dave echoes his sentiment. There's something fundamentally wrong in the UK about these so-called business leaders. I'm sick and tired of them. I think the country's sick and tired of them as well. I mean, the fact that the difference between the difference between work remuneration and management and CEO remuneration and board remuneration, the gap between those two things has never, ever, ever been higher. I wish I had the exact figures to hand for this segment right now, but believe you me, that gap has gotten wider over the past 40 years since the neoliberal revolution, and it's only getting wider day by day by day. And especially since they're happy to pay out loads of shareholder dividends as well at the same time. Amid that change, trade unions like the CW are proving themselves the primary fighting force for people in this country, facing a cost of living crisis standards not seen since records began. Particularly since, as Dave puts it, political parties have left the field, including fucking Keith Starmer, sacking people for joining pickets and refusing to explicitly back union action in the face of the cost of living crisis. Some Labour leader. On the picket line, pink flags waving in a summer breeze, cautious optimism in the face of such hostility seems buoyed by the strength and popularity of recent action taken or being planned by workers in other sectors and cities across the country, from transport to healthcare to law and beyond. We'd seen a barrister's strike, we're possibly seeing a nurse's strike, and we're almost certainly going to see teachers going on strike as well, over not just pay, but also jobs, also about conditions too. Let's be clear, a lot of people talk about the RMT strikes in the vein of, well, how much of a pay rise are they going to get, how much, but they're also trying to fight against things like mandatory redundancies, having conditions ripped up, having their pensions raided. There's not just about the actual work remuneration, but the other benefits that they're going to be able to get from working in that sector as well. I think it's time now, not just to talk about coordinating action, but to come up with plans for innovative forms of action that all workers, whether in a union or not, can participate in, Dave says. I mean, this is bigger than the summer of discontent. This really is a change in views. I think we can build a very strong movement now. And that is true. Public support for the strike action has been so high that when BBC went down to try and find people to condemn the strikes, they literally couldn't find anybody. And in the face of a government that is kind of falling apart, the Conservative Party, whose mandate on power is growing slimmer by the day, it's going to be really difficult for us to be able to fight against that when they still have a monopoly on political power because of the fact that they don't have to call any general election or anything. And with the Labour Party, who refused to support them, or whose leadership at the very least refused to kind of holistically support the union movement in general, it's then becoming incredibly difficult to fight that battlefield in Parliament. So it's going to have to take on a larger, more diverse movement from all of the trade unions and people outside of the union movement as well. As the cost of living crisis spirals, something it seems has got to give. If the solidarity displayed on picket lines throughout the country in recent weeks is anything to go by, it's not going to be the workers. Very, very, very true. Oh, okay. What unit? You said you worked in? Was it working for some kind of a charitable advice sector? Was it Shade 993? Which again, like on which union represents you? It'd be interesting to get some information on that. But yeah, absolutely, 100%. There needs to be more solidarity amongst people, regardless of which union that they're in. Citizens Advice and Unite, perfect. Hopefully, fingers crossed, either you get some kind of settlement, or if no settlement comes, hopefully they do a vote to strike in that case. 'Cause remember, people don't want to go on strike. People only feel like it's necessary to go on strike if they can't negotiate and can't get a settlement. Again, and as we said about RMT, anyone who's upset at the train strikes, look, tell Grant Shapps that he should allow the people who are in the position as members of all of the private franchises who run the network, they should be allowed to go into proper negotiations untethered by the government. But Grant Shapps doesn't want to, because he wants to be able to create this war between the government and the unions deliberately to try and turn public opinion against them, which unfortunately for now hasn't really worked. On Monday, when BT and Openreach workers stage the second day of strike action, we'll be calling for supporters to bring food donations to picket lines across the UK. We'll then coordinate the distribution of items in local communities, which is great. When we have such shame, when there's such shame in this country that so many people who are in work are relying on food banks, it's stuff like this. This kind of mutualist action is what we actually need across society, really. Well, I mean, maybe your union reps might get a little bit more tetchy if we get some kind of coordinated strike action across the UK. Now, it's not just strike action amongst BT Openreach that the CW are organising right now. There's also a Royal Mail strike going on right now, which had 90% support across, I think, a 90% turnout as well. So one of the highest percentages they've ever really had as a mandate for strike action amongst Royal Mail. Because there's a quote-unquote modernisation plan, which we all know just means trying to make it to save costs, save overheads, and be able to cause redundancies. As the plan that Dave Ward has put down here, later starts, less pay for new entrants, cutting allowances, mandatory 7-day working patterns, a cut in sick pay and annualised hours. And like he said, absolutely, it's not a race to the bottom. It's also not modernisation, it is a race to the bottom, and he's 100% correct in his analysis. And the best part is, once you know that it's what the union movement is part of and what they do and what successes that we can have, everyone can feel that level of solidarity that we should all be showing amongst each other. It shouldn't be a fight like the media and the Tories want it to be. It shouldn't be a fight against, well, nurses get paid less than train drivers, who get paid less than barristers, who get paid more than Royal Mail workers, who get paid more than call centre workers. We should be saying, well, it doesn't really matter who gets paid more than who, as long as the companies are profitable and they're refusing to give us pay rises in line or at least close to inflation, right? That's the big issue. And we all understand that, regardless of how different our pay is, it's still way different to the people right at the top. The people, the CEOs getting paid out in stock options, or the shareholders getting paid out in dividends, right? It's all about coming together with solidarity with each other, as is shown by this beautiful picture of the Royal Mail office in Kettering opposite the BT Exchange, with both of the two picket lines coming together to support each other, which is just a really good piece of solidarity that we're here to see. Speaking of successful strike action and speaking of settlements, there was a Coventry bin strike that's gone on for 7 months now, against a Labour council, no less, someone who's supposed to represent workers, who Keir Starmer wouldn't even support, right, as the leader of the Labour Party. They have finally won their strike action against Coventry Council, getting themselves a 12.9% pay rise, which is above inflation. Fantastic for these people. It just shows that if you hold firm against a council that refuses to give you, the settlement that you are trying to negotiate for, whilst hiring scabs to undermine your work and give the public a worse service, if you stick to your guns, you can win those settlements as well. Excellent work there as well. As you've seen, 6 months continuous strike action ends in victory for Coventry bin workers, getting 12.9% pay rises, extra Christmas bonuses, and confirmation that no disciplinary action will be taken against the union representative who they were planning on taking some kind of targeted disciplinary action against. This is why you should join a bloody union, right? This is the kind of thing that you can get to today. If you go to tuc.org.uk/join union, find out which your union is and get everybody organised. Because once you get organised and you have the power of withdrawing your labour, these are the kind of things that you can negotiate for. Excellent work. And last of all, the thing that's going to happen next, what we need to look at here is that individual strikes are good. Individual settlements are excellent. But what we really need, thank you very much for the follow, Portilla, welcome to the Injustice stream. What we really need is a change. We need proper, a sea change in how our economy works. And the way that we're going to do that is by calling for a general strike, or at least some kind of coordinated action across unions, across sectors, and even people who aren't even in unions themselves. And so here's Dave Ward and LBC talking about if there are continued attacks on all workers, then they're going to have to be collective action to defend themselves overall. Let's listen.
Just finally, do you agree with Mick Lynch of the RMT that should Liz Truss become Prime Minister, there should be a general strike?
Well, what I do agree is that if we get any more...
I mean, I do absolutely agree with it. Even John McDonnell said that it shouldn't be ruled out.
Attacks on working people in the UK, we have to defend ourselves, because clearly the Labour Party are not going to do that. So it will be up to trade unions, and I would definitely support forms of collective action that all workers can participate in. And I've actually had a discussion with Mick on that, and we're talking to other trade union leaders as well on the same issue.
And would that be triggered by the election of Liz Truss as Prime Minister?
I don't think it'd necessarily be triggered by that. I think it'd be triggered by the reality of how people are suffering at the moment with the cost of living crisis. And I think we need to do more. I mean, the CW...
Audio sounding better now? I hope.
You as a union has led a campaign which all unions have now signed up to, calling for a new deal for workers and a new social settlement. That sits alongside the current wave of disputes. And, we're talking about we've got to do something here to end in-work poverty, to end some of the exploitation that's taking place, which unfortunately is now also taking place in one of the UK's iconic companies. It can't continue.
This is heading towards masses of strike action. I mean, it's happening already, Dave, but this is going to mean a summer and winter of almost continuous strike action if you guys...
Also, if you're enjoying the content, please do consider subscribing. It always helps out the channel. Any support is always appreciated. Subscriptions and bits, even a contribution on Patreon, always appreciated but never expected.
I say you guys, the unions, the big unions, get your act together and combine on this, isn't it?
Well, I've heard the phrase summer of discontent, but what we're talking about, I think, is actually bigger than that. I think it's time to seriously look at whether trade unions, community organisations can build a new social movement that can fill the vacuum that's been left politically by all the mainstream parties, because none of them are taking the right actions to support working class people.
Corbynism 2.0.
I mean, Corbynism was done through the parliamentary sector. That was done through the Commons. Corbyn was trying to use public policy to make these changes. What Dave Ward is talking about here is collective action. Through people power, through civil unrest, through direct action, right? That's what he's talking about. It's different from Corbynism, but he's correct in that there needs to be a shifting power towards working people that's kind of left since the adoption of the neoliberal consensus 40 years ago.
I don't call it anything. I call it workers coming together, workers standing up for their rights. And, I think it really is a moment where you will see a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people, will come and support that type of action and protest.
100% absolutely based. I couldn't find any other union news for this week, so that's your lot for union news roundup. But there we go. Strike being one for the Coventry bin workers. We're seeing additional strike action from RMT and also ASLEF this weekend as well, the actual train drivers who are represented by ASLEF rather than RMT. And then also we're seeing strikes in Royal Mail and BT Group moving forward. When, again, I think he's right. We're going to see a continual rolling industrial action over the course of the summer. And I think we have good things to look forward to as the movement builds a little bit further. Excellent. And if you are continuing to enjoy this on YouTube, please do consider liking and subscribing. Thank you very much. I'll catch you on the next one. Was there anything else that I wanted to talk about? What time are we on? We're on 11 o'clock, actually. It is pretty late. I think we're going to raid out, actually, in that case. That I am getting quite tired and I am working tomorrow after a week off work. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. I really do appreciate all of the chats and all of the new follows. We're going to raid into Mooncat, who is just playing some Stray. Be a nice, cozy little stream with the cat and the nice girl who does the good videos. Thank you very much, guys. I do appreciate all of the work. I will be not streaming tomorrow. I might stream on Sunday evening. I'm out for Pride on Saturday, so I can't stream tomorrow. But I will put a segment up tomorrow that you can watch on YouTube, which will be the majority of the hustings that I covered earlier today that you all missed before the raid. So if you want to catch up on that, that'll be on my YouTube channel. Link is over there. Thank you very much for all of your fun contributions, and I will